And one of the best ways to maximize this kind of programs is to make sure that during the week you have budgeted 20, 30, 1 hour, depending on the capacity you have, to refresh on what you have done, and then build a visibility plan and roadmap. So I encourage everybody today to leave and come back with a visibility plan and roadmap. I told you guys to chat me, right? I gave you guys free access to me. People are not reaching, people are just chatting me and saying, hi, happy to connect. I'm happy to connect with you, but that's not why I asked you to reach out to me. Use me. Use me, use me, use me. You will go to your pastors, you go to your afar, you go to all your counselors now and be disturbing them, and they'll tell you to meet their peer and book time. I'm telling you to take my time now, and you're all doing shakara. Okay, use me, use me, use me. Ask me questions, book time, but have a roadmap. If you just join this boot camp with no clear expectation as to what you want to achieve at the end of the plan or what you intend to take out of here, it will just be another bunch of activity that you have devoted XYZ of your time. We don't have any time in our life. Everybody has the equal 24 hours. No other person has an extra time than 24 hours. So we need to maximize it. And if you're going to give 2 hours every Saturday to sit here and listen to me explain a technology that you're not yet familiar with, it will only be fair to yourself that you come up with a plan on how you can ensure that what you're hearing, what you're being taught, you can replicate it. So please do yourself a very good thing. Take out time and come up with a visibility plan. It's as simple. I saw a couple of people do it, during the week, and that's as simple as what hit you during the session. What hit you during it could just be one word. It could be the word identity provider. You'd be like, oh, so is this what means? Does it mean that when my username and password is stored, when I in my organization where I'm working, it's called an identity provider, and it's good to know that it's Microsoft, and that's all that hits you in the class, and you take that up and you do a bit of write up. We have AI tools sitting everywhere. You could just come up with a simple, give me one flashcard that talks about something about identity provider, or you drop what you was a catch for you and say convert it into a hook post that I can make on LinkedIn, and ChatGPT or whatever AI tool you use will give you that, and you post and use the hashtags. I I wasn't really, really wowed to see that only just two people out of the class that stayed consistently. I think we were about over 50 something to the end, right? You gave me 2 hours, 30 minutes, if not more of your time. So it means that you're devoted, but you're making one big mistake everybody makes. You sit in class, you hear teachers teach you, trainers train you, and you leave. No action. It's almost like what people do when they go to their religious houses. Have you not seen the amount of people who write down things when religious leaders are talking, and we come out and look at the society, it's not even any better than it is? So please, let's not do that. Let's take notes that we will use to make ourselves visible. So 3 more minutes. I'm going to any questions, please. Any questions from last week? Me, nobody has any question. Wow. So you understood everything from beginning to end. And your module that you have read, you understood everything. Thank you, guys. Okay, more hands. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so all right, great. So it was for me. I switched laptops. All right, thank you. A couple of questions. I'll do a quick run question through the chat, and then we'll hit. Somebody says, what's the difference between Microsoft Entra and Microsoft Entra ID? So Microsoft Entra, right, is the name of the brand, the guy that houses the whole system. Microsoft Entra, the Microsoft suite is called Microsoft Entra. It used to be Microsoft Azure. So the way you have Amazon AWS and the way you have Google Clouds and the way you have Oracle, like that, and the way you have Salesforce. So Microsoft Entra is the guy who owns the bucket of all the Microsoft suites, right? So Bill Gates owns Microsoft, but inside Microsoft has so many other things, right? So the bucket for cloud. So if you say, for example, you're learning cloud, or so you're learning Microsoft Entra, but sitting inside, there's so many components. So one of the components that we are learning in this pathway is the identity, and that's Microsoft Entra ID. Are you seeing it? So now we've taken out Microsoft Entra ID. When we move to data, we'll be looking at Microsoft Purview. And when we move to AI, we're looking at Microsoft Data Security Purview Management. Are you seeing it? So Microsoft Suite has so many things, but Entra is the big guy, and then Entra ID is the identity provider. I hope that answered your question. Thank you. Man, I like my students. Please, wow me, respond to answers. If you see people ask questions and you have an idea, please trust me. No, I would want you to reply, because I will read the question, and if your answer is off point, then I will call you to order and say your answer is off point. But that shows me that I have people in the class who are reading and who have gone ahead of me. So yes, if you can pick up people's questions and respond to them, in the context of the question. If the question is not technical, don't it's not related to the topic, please don't respond, and the team will pick it up, and will look at it. But yes, I like the fact that I saw somebody responding to some of the questions today and all of that. Yeah, let's work as a team. Awesome. Awesome. Please, how do I make of healthy auditing practice? I don't know what the person means, right? How do I make of a healthy auditing practice as an individual, or as a you want to take auditing as a so if you could, Moses, if you could please just reward your question. Is a bit confusing for me. Auditing practice as a person, are you saying how do you make auditing practice, how do you have a healthy auditing practice? Is it for yourself, for your lifestyle, for how you use the internet, or how you use devices? Please. All right, so let's move. Day 2. Again, quick reminder, why are we doing this? We're in an 8-week journey. We've done week 1, and this is week 2, looking at practical skills in identity and access management. We spent time last week giving you run through what identity and access management is, and why it's very critical to secure people's identity, how identities are, what they mean, and then we'll cascade by week 4. We'll be looking at purview, which is data and AI security, and so we're going to bridge that gap and give you for that fundamental foundational knowledge on how these different solutions help you provide security practices with specific to Microsoft technology, just so that you can be a step ahead of your predecessor when you're applying for jobs. Key takeaway would be that you would have learned how to secure identities in Microsoft's own solution, which is Microsoft Entra ID. You would have understood MFA, rollback access control, identity protection, what it means in the Microsoft suite. You understand what we talk about, joiners, movers, leavers, entitlement management. When you join an organization, and they tell you welcome, and they give you those nice swags. From a technical perspective, to what does it mean? You sit down, your username and password is given to you, and once you enter, you find yourself being able to log into so many things, and when you don't have access, they'll tell you to do A, B, C, D. What's all those components, and how can we improve on it? And interestingly, what do the regulators require from us now? So there's NIST, there's DORA, there's ISO 27001, there's PCI DSS. All these regulators are now emphasizing the importance of identity security, right? And so what does that mean for you? We'll now move into data and security. So this is what, and for those who didn't meet me, quick rundown. My name is Joy Medom, 12 years plus experience in this industry, written a couple of books and workbooks for you to use to kickstart your career. I'm available on all social media platforms, major social media platforms. Please reach out to me, connect. Let's see how to help you get into this career. Trust me, this career path is one career path that is not exhaustive, because as long as the world gets hooked on the internet, gets interested in the internet, we'll keep needing cybersecurity professionals. And we showed you last week, so go watch our YouTube videos where we showed you the numbers, right? And even when more jobs are coming to close the gap, more jobs are being created by the need and advancement of cyber, right? And so we want you to join us so that we can be able to provide the world into a better place. Quick recap: looked at identity and access management. What is IAM? What is identity? Identity as a control plane. We understood the four arms of government. That's the name I gave it, right? The 4 arms of government. This class, rather, we chose to call the authentication, authorization, auditing, and administration the 4 arms of government of identity, because everything around identity sits around these 4 guys, right? You authenticate, you authorize, you audit, and you administer, right? We looked at identity design, such as the identity provider, central identity management, and then we did just a little bit of scratching the surface on tokens, user accounts, subscription, tenants, and licenses. Bear with me, if you are an advanced person and in this class, some of these things will look like young gist to you, but one of the things we do in Textile is that we try to give beginners class just so that people can mature into this. So my style of teaching will be very, very granular. I will be making sure that people understand it to the nitty-gritty. So I'll be skipping some terminologies that are going to sound too ambiguous for the need one, and dive in. We're ready now, guys. So please give me your attention. Don't be distracted. Let's see how to get this. Um, Ask me questions when I move on. Now we're going into the main thing. We're going to look at Entra and identity. So please stay with me, stick with me, don't be distracted. We're going to explore identity in Microsoft Entra. Now let's talk about identity. Um, Today's digital environments, they are full of identities. And identities are not only people. Identities are also apps, bots, services. Your counterparts that are in the Power BI clients, your counterparts that are in the Power Apps, Power Automate, in the Copilot agentic sessions, that'll be creating different connectors, different apps, different agents, would be using identities, right, that are beyond the human identity. So when we say human identities, we're talking about a human being, you, contractors, suppliers that we can place a face to. But identity surpasses that, and it also includes what we call the non-human identities, things like apps and bots. So when you're thinking about identities, don't limit yourself to people, don't limit yourself to human being, right? Anything, even an application can become an identity when it's calling a service, because that service will be open up itself as an API, will be open up its API to receive connection from that app, right? So apps, bot services, devices. Your device today is connected to the internet. Your device has an IP address, has a logical IP address, has a physical MAC address, talks to the internet. That's why it's an identity. That's why no matter the type of fraud that somebody eventually does, somehow your fingerprints, right, can be traced back to you and you can be found because that's an identity that you're living. So another way you want to understand different categories of identities, that look at it in your house today. You have a family, right? You have your children, you have your support staffs, right? Your cleaners, your drivers, you have your delivery app, you have your IP cameras in your house, right? Many people that have seen lots of ads around, intelligent door systems, right? Oh, you come and say, Siri, open the door is open, and for those things to happen, it's not magic, it's an identity, it's a service, it's an app connecting from one place to the other, right? And all of them need access, right? And they all need different type of access. So when you put your CCTV camera, I was telling somebody who had built her career in setting up CCTV camera, and she now started becoming aware, of security, the way we talk about it. She practiced network security. You look for cameras, she would set it up, design, putting cameras at right angles that will catch the right, images and captures. And so I asked her, I said, whenever you deploy, right, have you ever thought about designing the role-based access control and looking at the data and storage of this? Because now that cloud was coming, she started getting lots of clients who wanted to move away from the old structure where you have the I can't remember what they call those things, that where the data stores, the camera stores the data in your office and all of that. Now people were moving to the cloud, and those demands were exposing her to cloud technology, and she never saw identity security the way. And I said that's why most times people cannot even say where their data is. They are doing CCTV cameras in their house. That's nice. Who has access to it? Who has access to the logs? Where are those images that are being kept? What's the control over it? So when you understand that these different activities that happen in your home, the different fingerprints that is put in all form into identity, right? Moving away into your office, right? People, like again, I said, when we talk about identity, everybody just looks at human beings, people. It's beyond humans and people. You look at apps, APIs, all of them need, an identity. Let's even take it a niche further. Look at the world of content creators and influencers, right? Influencers are not, they're not necessarily the ones who manage their account morning after the night, right? An influencer would build a team. It will have even an app that helps them schedule, for ease of access. Then they will have executive assistants and they will have PAs, right? And these days, I looked at a couple of celebrity weddings that have trended, and there's this thing I'm seeing now. They call them content. So and a celebrity is going for an activity like the AMV Awards and all of that, they have content creators as now part of their team who follow them and get angles, shots, and get activities that happen there that they will use to create content that follows up from that event. And I was like, okay, this is becoming interesting. So there are many jobs that are coming out now that didn't used to exist, right? And we're seeing them come out now, and it's getting me excited. I'm like, that's good. So imagine you running a business as an influencer now, and you're not paying attention to the identities that you have built around you, right? Those are the things that will lead to when you are in your vulnerable moments. You cannot be able to pinpoint who has taken out information from your circle and put it out there, especially when we're in a world now where data is money. So when we begin to go into the data space, you understand why we had to merge identity and data. We live in a world where data is now the value. Have you seen when people are calling people at the time and say, show us evidence? People want data. And for you to get data, you need to create some identity, to be able to take out data, or you need to have some kind of identity. So if you're starting to start thinking, right, who is managing my account? If my account is being used for my social media space, am I also allowed to use this same account to be able to interact with personal conversations with, because these people are human beings. And so if my account, I have given access to my executive assistants and my PA, what type of access do they have such that they can do the work I want them to do? And then my personal life, they don't have interference with it, just so that if I am in a vulnerable space with whatever person I'm with, they don't take that information and then we have a fallout. Why am I taking my time to break this? I'm showing you that you see you that is learning identity today. The relevance of your job is limitless. You can't box yourself and say, I'm only going to use it if I sit in a corporate world. No, I am now showing you how, even in your home. So if you are a mother here who, by virtue of the way you and your partner have structured this, that right now you don't work so that you can help us look after children, but you want to begin to upskill yourself and you've come to this class and you're getting these skills, guess what? You know, sitting at your home, you can begin to build what we call playbooks and rule books for other people to use as home. And imagine selling them as a digital product that people use. Why? Because you sat down and you looked at the home as an entity and you developed a run book for identifying all your identities at home and setting them up securely. So imagine a home that has a CCTV camera, a home that has lots of ad hoc staff, how they come in, how to build all those processes, and then you form it up, and a home that, and then you develop some kind of identity framework for homes. Imagine doing that, right? And then look at it again, like I showed you, the content creation world, right? So I had to drop this here for you to understand when we talk about identity, it's not limited to when you sit in an office. As much as we're teaching you Microsoft Entra ID, which is used mainly by organizations, do you know that lots of people in the retail business, lots of people in different types of businesses today use Microsoft Entra? Unfortunately, most times in Africa, we only look at the big shots, if it's bank, if it's oil and gas. And so a lot of people think that that's the only place where these solutions are of relevance. Meanwhile, look at the retail business, right? You can create different identities. Because you can have people who come in as part-time staff, come in as summer holiday staff, come in as what do they call them? Event staff. So you have an event and you want to create these staffs for this particular events. When they are done, how do you get their identity? And when they are done, expunge them from the system so that they don't take corporate data away. The concept of identity is just beyond sitting or working for a corporate environment. I hope that makes sense to somebody. If you did, please let me know. If you're like, Joy, you're still speaking jargons, I've not understood, then stay with me, we're coming, right? Now we've understood that identity is just beyond human beings, right? Now we're looking at identity as human versus non-human, right? Right. So I gave a bit of example here. Human beings, people, real people that are interacting with system, they are human identity. They would require identity for authentication. They will require for authorization. Remember, authentication is what we said, your username, your password, and maybe a multi-factor authentication that you have put behind it. Authorization is, what am I supposed to do? Now that I have this access, what can I see? What can I not see? What can I edit? What can I not edit, right? Accounts that are managed by roles and passwords and MFA. Typically, these are employee accounts, typically contractor accounts, customer for business to clients, typically privilege accounts admin. And then in a hybrid situation, remember when I told you guys about the old school guy who is called the Microsoft Active Directory, right? So when you connect the Microsoft Active Directory to the Microsoft Entra ID, that's when we use the term hybrid or use the term on-prem. And when we look at, the non-human identity, these are digital entities that most times are seen to act on behalf of a user. So an app, an agent, a bot, a connector, most times sitting behind them, they are acting on behalf of users, right? So you utilize things like certificates, secret keys, tokens. You won't necessarily see them put username and password. They are calling services and calling claims and calling tokens, and that's how they connect, right? Most times they're also automated, so they're not things where somebody has to manually come and trigger something for them to work. No, they are mainly around automated, and because of this, that automatically makes them highly sensitive, and they have high privileges because they want to be able to, on the fly, go and connect with something, pull out record. So today you log into your internet banking and you're happy when you put in your username and password, right? But the moment you put in your username and password, there was a service that was able to go into the core banking application and check that who is Joy Bedon, what's her last balance, and pulled it up, and I could see my account balance, right? That thing is a service, and that service is a non-human identity that went to call that service, right? So your phone, and you traveled, but you want to check up on your house once in a while. So you bring out your phone, log into your CCTV app, right? When you put in your username and password, that's the human identity. But for the app itself to be able to, go to all the cameras that in your house and pull out those data, those feeds that load on your phone, and just by sitting in your phone XYZ meters away from your home, you can see what happened. I have an uncle who is in Europe, and he put somebody in his house back in Abia State, and the house, it can be petty, but just enjoy the gist for the explanation. And he has different fruits, and he always asks the guy, isn't that these fruits doesn't mature? You don't call me today. And the guy will say, oh God, the fruits did not mature this year, they didn't produce anything. So as at this time, he didn't have CCTV, so he had put CCTV in his house, and he started using his CCTV to monitor when his fruits will mature. So on this particular day, he had turned on the camera to see, his compound, and this young man was harvesting the oranges and the pawpaw and everything, and he took it to sell. And the man took his phone and called him while he was doing it and said, I see you, I see what you're doing. So, just to get us to, get a bit of humor in the room. But that's what the power of having a system that can call another system and pull information. So the ability for his phone app, the service that was configured and bundled in that phone app, to go to the camera that is in his house, miles and miles away apart. He's in Europe, his house is somewhere in Abia State now. But because of the internet and because of service to service call, he was able to see what is happening in their house. Those become non-human identities. Any question? All right. Now, let's move it. Remember, we're studying Microsoft. We're learning Microsoft. So when I give a bit of background, I will always take us back into Microsoft, how Microsoft interprets it. Right. So Microsoft categorizes it into internal identities and external identities. Internal identities would be, again, these your users who you create internally inside your Entra ID. Don't forget that we had learned last week that you have to have a system that you use to manage identities, and that system is called an identity provider. And so the Microsoft Entra ID is the identity provider we're going to be getting familiar with. Now, inside the Microsoft Entra identity, it categorizes these users, these different users that you'll be working with, all right, into internal and external. And for the internal identities, they are mainly those user accounts, like we have mentioned, employees, contractors, high admin accounts that you create in the system. Also the service account. So for example, if you'll be working with somebody in the Power Automate or Power Apps stream, right, who will probably need to set up a HR application. I'm just giving an example, right, for a company. What it means that because that HR application is for a company, the connectors and the service account that that person would use would be set up in that internal Entra ID. And so that would be a service principal or a managed identity, and that would be internal. But then again, Microsoft is aware that, okay, you have interactions with external people, right? And so you will need, these identities, you want to manage them. And so it categorizes this other block of people or block of accounts as external identities. They are also users or applications from outside your tenant, but you have granted them some kind of access in a limited and controlled way into your tenant. It could be your partners, it could be your guest users. So for example, many of you today are connected to Teams, right? And you can use the Teams of textilers that was used to set up this meeting, and you can interact in the chat. right? And you can do so, but you cannot go to our SharePoint files and our SharePoint folders and do stuff. Some of you, they've gone ahead to even extend maybe some locations where they told you upload this, do that. But beyond that location, you cannot do any other thing in the textile as tenant, right? So you are actually an external identity and you're a guest user that be giving some kind of access. And that's the same thing when you start building apps, right? If there's going to be a need to say, okay, vendors should be able to log in and upload XYZ evidence, right? For them to do XYZ projects. Those vendors are not your staff, but you have been able to give them access to your environment for them to do ABC. They become external identities. So bear that in mind when we start looking at scenario based, right? What type of different identity, right? Now, what's the relationship? Now, going further and looking at them as internal and external, Microsoft also categorize that internal and external into what we call the guest and the member. Please, if you have any question for me, write it down, right? Write it down in the chat so that as I'm teaching, I'll take a break, I'll ask you a question so that you don't lose your train of thought because you could have a question that is related to a particular slide. So I'm happy to break in between to take questions. Now we've looked at human, non-human identities. And we've understood that we can have both human and non-human identities in our organizations, right? If now look at that, Microsoft identifies identities as internal and external. But further into that, because of how the user authenticates, Microsoft also classified it as guest and member. But Microsoft will not just ask who a user is. Microsoft is interested, where are you coming from? Because where you're coming from would also determine the kind of access that you have or how you're going to be able to access certain things, right? Um, Internal or external, what's your access level? Are you guest? Are you an external guest? Are you an internal guest? Because he wants to be able to make sure that you are giving the minimal access, minimal time ban, so that you don't overdo things. Again, I like to use this. You know how those days they'll say someone will come to the house and when the person they are cooking, and the person will sense that oh they are cooking, and when he wants to go, he say, "Mama, I don't they go," and they'll say, "Ah, bye bye, Johnny." He say, "Mama, I don't they go, bye bye, Johnny." Johnny is sensing that they are cooking food, and they too they're sensing Johnny is waiting, so that they can give him, and they don't want to give him the food. So Johnny keeps reannouncing himself and reannouncing himself, and they keep confirming that Johnny can go. So it's the same thing when you come as an identity. Microsoft wants to know who are you, where are you, where do I send you to? Stop giving me your username and password continuously. I need to put some form of authorization under this user so I can know where you're supposed to go. Am I supposed to give you this food to eat, or am I supposed to tell you, bye bye, we don't have enough portion for you? Where do I direct you to? And if I know who you are, then I can know where to direct you. I gave the example of how in some homes, your drivers, come into your house, they can go to your kitchen and have food, but they can't go to your master bedroom. However, your housekeeper who cleans the house, right? Even though that seems like an external person, the person is not a member of the family per se, but because of their role and function, right, they can go to your master room. In fact, many of you have your direct siblings who can come to your house today, but cannot go to your master room. But when you were single before you married, right, they could go to your bedroom. But because you're married now by virtue of your partner, right, that role that they had before has swapped. So they still remain your family, they still remain eternal members, but the access that is granted to them now has switched. They switch roles and you can only determine where they go to. So continuously you will see these different movements and handshakes in the organization. That's where we get to understand things around joiner, mover, leavers. Where am I going to? What access do I require? How long do I require this access? Where do I stay? All of these things is inside this 4 bucket called external guest, external member, internal guest. Any questions? This classification is not just technical, it sounds technical, but trust me, when you start going into real life jobs, before you even implement, you need to conceptualize this thing, you need to define it. So it's what shapes how you apply your policies, how you apply your licenses, how you manage your risk. So it has nothing to do with how you configure it on Entra, which we'll show you today. I always tell people that's the easiest thing to configure it. But to do the design and the architecture that explains where this goes to, how long it goes, what it does here, that will prevent that breach from happening, that cyber compromise from happening, right? So that you don't have that incident is where the piece of work is. And that's why this classification is important. If you get it wrong, right, you will give full access to somebody who shouldn't have it. And you know what that can amount to. So let's use this question and answer. Please be very interactive, right? So I'm going to ask a few questions to see if you understood what I'm saying. So your company hires a marketing consultant for a 3-month contract campaign. So you hire this marketing consultant, you have this new product you want to launch. The product is just going to be for 3 months, but because they are sensitive documents, right? So you say to the person, don't use your email address, right? We're going to create an account for you, and you'll be able to access our Teams, our SharePoint, our planner for this interaction, right? Is this identity internal, right? So not necessarily that you will create, sorry, you will grant them access to your own team site, your SharePoint site, and your planner using their own identity, right? So is this an internal or external? And is this identity a guest or a member? And is this a human or non-human identity? So that we understand how it is. So there are 3. So I will expect you to answer the 3. Not so if you give me external, so there are 3 questions in one. So your answer should be 3 answers. So you should not say external, then the other one is it guest or member, the other one is it human or non-human. Good. I like the way Comfort put it. That's how I want your answer, just like that. The 3 buckets, right? Put your answer like that. External, guest, human. That's what the Comfort is saying. External, guest, human. Internal, guest. This class is fire. Good. So the correct answer is that this is an external user. You're not creating her on your system, but you're just giving her access to your system, right? So she's external, right? This marketing consultant is external. See me automatically, I've genderized the person. I said she, the question. Okay, that's fine. This person is external. Now, because again, you are just giving them access, right? They are a guest. You're not bringing them into the whole system and giving them full. It's for a project. They're only just going to do one thing. So they are guests. And because it's a human being, right? We'll be very able to identify that she is a person. We can put a face to the person, is human. So the correct answer is external, guest, human. Again, the audio for you to talk has not been sorted out. So please, if you have any question, drop it in the chat group so that I can answer. Thank you, guys. That was good. So let's take it one more. One more question. An app hosted in AWS uses OAuth authentication to authenticate against the Microsoft Entra ID. So you have an app, an application. So if you say app, it's application, short form. An application is hosted on the Amazon AWS, but this application is connected to your Microsoft Entra using one of the authentication mechanisms called OAuth, right? And it's calling a graphic API because probably wants to see a calendar data. So maybe there's a schedule that you've configured on this app. I just give you an example of account balance, right? I've told you how when you put your username and password on your mobile banking app, right? If you don't see anything, you freak out. What you want to see is you want to see what your account balance is, or you want to see what your last transaction is. Those things don't sit on those mobile app. They are in servers, but your mobile app is an application that needs to go and call that service, right, to do that display. So imagine that again, that in this scenario here, we said an app that was hosted in AWS needs to call a calendar data graphic API, right? And it needs to get, that information. Is this an internal or external? Is this a guest? Is it a human or non-human? Thank you very much. For those who answered, it is external. Remember, it's in AWS. It's not in your tenant. It's only calling your service. So those who started with internal, you already got it wrong. This app, it already told you there. It said the app is hosted in AWS. Remember, you're Entra. This is in AWS. So that already classifies it as external. Now it's now saying that it's going to connect to you, right, to call up a service, right? So it's a guest because you're coming to collect something from me. You're not really staying with me. You're not really living with me. Only just coming. You're a guest, right? Your friend comes to your house. Now your G, you offer them food. They finish eating. Bye-bye, go. They go, right? But when they come to your house, they could still maybe use your restroom. They could still go to the kitchen. They could access 1 or 2 places, but they don't live in your house. That's a guest. When they're done with whatever they are doing, they go back to wherever they're coming from, right? And remember, because we said it's an app, automatically that tells us that it's not a human being. So it's a non-human. You guys are making me so proud of myself. Means that this thing is sinking. Don't worry. Some people, I can see some of you are mixing it here. Even me, till tomorrow, when I'm doing design and architecture, I would still get confused sometimes. So I still write. I have lots of books, around me. So don't beat yourself if you're saying I'm missing it is confusing. There's no right or every time you need to design, you will need to think again. Is this external one rule? Because something can be internal in a scenario A, but in another scenario it becomes external. So let's look at this one. Your company is part of a multi-tenant setup, meaning that maybe your company is a group and their subsidiaries, right? So the group will have one tenant and then the subsidiaries will have another tenant. Now, the HR manager from the group, the parent company, has assigned you to work on a project in your tenant. So she gets you full access like an internal employee. So she wants you to work on a project and gets you full access to work on that tenant for that your company, right? Is this an internal, external, guest, non-human? This is tricky. I can see a bit of places that people are mixing it up, but I know why they are mixing it up. One, two, three. You sure I didn't mix it? Okay. Good. So this person is an external person. But the moment you see that line that I say she gets full access like an internal, automatically flipped the question and it became internal. And I'm happy none of you fell for it, right? You all were able to spot that, right? This person is external. This is a junior HR person staying somewhere. They brought them to work. So ideally, they should just be assessing. But the thing says that they are going to give her full access like an internal. So that's where the jinx brings. That's why I said this thing will always be confusing. So the HR person that was assigned the project is external to that parent company, but the requirement, business requirement made it clear that give this person full access. So automatically, this person now becomes internal. The person is going to act as an internal person, that person's identity. So it's not the person in the company again, it is the person's identity to do the job because they said give the person access as an internal switches that person's identity. If not, it would have been an external identity because this person is external to the tenant she's working on. But they said that the access that will be given would be an access like an internal employee. And then it is member because you're going to be, the moment you're an internal, then you become a member of that organization. So they're probably going to create an account there that they will call, use the same naming convention, maybe put a extension called consultant or something, right? But the person is supposed to act like an internal person. You know how, I don't know, depending on some of you, some organizations, there are some staffs that come, they're not really your staff. But when they come, they work like your staff. They do everything like your staff. They join meetings, they join, but they're not really staffs, right? Those kind of people. So this is the kind of scenario. So they will still have internal accounts because they're acting as staff. It's only their person that distinguishes them, but the job that they do doesn't distinguish them from being internal and external. So that's the trick in that one. And then because it's a human being, it becomes human. All right. A developer manually creates a test user inside your tenant for policy testing. The account has minimal access and no license. Is this an external? Okay, sorry, I've missed one. Let me not mix it. Let's go back to one before this one. A HR just employs somebody into the company and the person starts on day one. On day one, she gets an email, and in her email, she gets her team access to HR system. Even a license was assigned to her automatically. Is this person internal, external? Also, yeah, remember she's a staff. This is what everybody's common. This is the most common scenario you are all common with, right? You get a job today, you go to HR office, HR welcomes you, HR says this is your default username and password, this is your email. Some of you will even get it in your email before you resume, and then you log in. The most easiest design, and that's it. You are an internal person, and once you're internal, because you're a member of the company, right, and you're a human being. Good. Now let's move to two more, and then we'll move further. Now, a developer manually creates a test user inside your Microsoft Entra ID, right? And then applies policy and says, oh, this test user account should be able to do X, Y, Z, but this test account has minimal access, no license, right? Minimal access, no license, right? Is this an internal, an external? Is this an internal or external? Is this a guest? Is this a human or non-human? Comfort, I want to be sure you're not answering this last question, because automatically, remember, the person has said that the account, so it's not a human being. So always read your business requirements. Can be tricky. The developer is the one that created a test user, yes. But the moment he says the account, it's not meaning that he's testing, it's not for somebody. He's going to use it to test. So it's a non-human, account with no license. All right. And then the last one, a managed identity for an Azure function running internal automation, right? Leave that one. I didn't really break it down. Why did I just put internal identity? But a managed identity is a non-human account. I wanted to break it down to talk about it's still used to manage internal. I was going to say used to manage internal Azure functions, so that makes it a member, and is a non-human account because it's a service account calling the Azure functions. Now, there's no right, there's no, oh, because I didn't get it, I don't know it. No, designs will always keep coming, use cases will always keep changing. The key thing now is that now what you have done and achieved and shown here today is that whenever you hear about identities, for you to be able to understand the right permissions and control to give, you want to be able to get the full picture about what the business is requiring. So at the top of your head, you want to know, do they really want a user account, or do they want a service account? Do they want a user account that is user but is going to act like this? So you are going to hear people say, oh, we're deploying this application and we want to test, but we want to test as well. If they want to test as staff, then that's a user account. But if they want to test as service, they give us an account, then that's a service. So it just helps you know, how are we creating an account, what process are we putting in place, what policy are we putting in place. So even you, the GRC person, who you're not necessarily technical, but then you want to make sure that when accounts are created, they are properly reviewed and they're properly off-boarded when not to use, and they properly given the right access, right? You want to understand whether they're internal, whether they're external, where are they going to, what do they want to do? Are they going to be for a human being? Because if it's a non-human account, remember, when the person has made request, you probably want to, in the request, put the name of the person who made it, or in the request, put the date of the service ticket. And you see, this is why it's important. So sometimes when auditors are reviewing, you will see them see lots of accounts. And when they're asking, IT can no more remember. And it's not IT's fault. It happened 2 years ago, and IT can't remember. And the moment they disable the account, service will break, right? So, but once you understand this, then you can map your process in your organization very clear, right? To say, okay, this process says that this person can do this. All right, I'm going to quickly look through the questions. I see a couple of 1 or 2 people have asked questions. Somebody says, you didn't answer the developer question. Let me move up to developer question. Okay, but says a developer manual. I didn't answer the developer. I did. I said the developer, a developer manually creates a test user inside your tenant, right? The account has minimal access and no license, right? So this account doesn't have any license, meaning that it's just going to call a service. They always trick you when they say user. It's a user. It's going to take the role of a user, but it's not owned by anybody, right? So it's a non-human account. It's created on your tenant. You notice they say created inside your tenant. So it's internal. Unlike the number 2, which was an app created in AWS, but was connected to you. This one is created in your tenant. So it's internal, right? And it's a member because it's created in your tenant. So it's a member. It's going to act like the organization. It exists in the organization because he said it's using for policy testing. But it has told you that it's not going to have any license. It's not going to have very minimal license. So it's just going to call a service which is public testing. So it's a non-human account. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it's not. Thank you.
Somebody said question 3 is an example of NYC member working in a school, assigned a class, marked and prepared a class register. Ooh, let's see number 3. 1, 2, 3. Uh, it depends, right? If the NYC person was provisioned by HR as a full staff, right? It could be 1, 2, 3, 4. It could be number 4. Again, that's why I said it's unique. If when the NYC person came and they said, because you're NYC, we know you're only going to be here for 9 months or 10 months, right? And probably don't even have any plans to retain you. Some organizations do, they want to know who is NY star. And even if they will retain you, then they do what they do, conversion. So you could now categorize this person. So you say, okay, you're NYC, but we're still going to create you inside the organization. You're still going to have access, right, to be able to see assignments, mark and prepare, but you are NYC, right? So it will categorize it under the number 1, 2, 3, 4, number 4, like an employee, because you are an employee. It's just that you have an attribute. So when we move into attributes, you see, you have an attribute that says that this person is an employee, but this person is NYC. This person is an employee, this person is a contract staff. So if you go to some of the oil companies, right, to you, the outsider, oh, your uncle is working in the oil company, your cousin is working in the oil company, but your cousin, when they're inside, their identity makes them, their colleagues know. When they see this, they know that this person is a contract staff, because their identity will probably have CON, or their identity will have maybe an extension that just shows that they are contract staff, while the full-time staffs have another extension. Please type your messages. You can't talk with your mics are muted. So just type. I can see hands coming up. Type your questions. Do we have any other questions so that we can move? Okay. When you know who you are, access becomes intentional, boundaries become clear, and control is possible. So when people come to you, when you start applying this in real world, like you get a job and you're sitting on a job and you see a service ticket and you're asking questions, you're going to get some people that will harass you. It's okay. They don't know it. You know what you're asking, you know what you're asking. Because even sometimes you're going to find yourself sitting, maybe you meet an organization where they've been doing it wrong and you want to add value. So when you hear, you can go to your boss and say, boss, I think we don't have a clear process. I can see that every week we get requests to create this kind of account, but there's no clearly defined process. Can we map out so that we can know what we're giving permissions to and who has access to what and how we can retrieve this, right? So again, like I said, these are not just about technology. It's important to know who you are, so that, and when we say know who you are from an identity perspective, so that we can know, the type of permissions, controls to put, and that's what helps us. Even when there's a cyber breach, it is this design and architecture that we have done that helps us know how far can this bridge go, where and where can it go to. So where and where can we put a stop, because this is only where this person has access. So if this account has been compromised, it can only do this here and it can't go beyond here. So let's lock down this perimeter so that this compromise doesn't exceed here. That's another benefit of why you do this kind of design. Now let's move it further. Now we understand how Microsoft categorizes identity, right? We know that Microsoft takes this identity, understands that they are human and non-human, but still wants to play around them because it wants to know where you want to go to. So still does things like external guest member. So now we know, and that will help us when we are defining our procedures and policies around accounts. But then let's understand this whole Microsoft ecosystem. Like somebody asked, what's the difference between Microsoft Entra and Microsoft Entra ID? And I already explained that Entra is the cloud solution. It used to be called Microsoft Azure before, so now it's called Microsoft Entra. And I told you that when you start doing your job search, it's okay if you still use Microsoft Azure, because some people are still using the old terminology. Some HR people are still using the old terminologies. Some recruiting, hiring managers are still using the old. Meanwhile, Microsoft itself is calling it Entra, right? So don't be, you might get confused on the internet. It's okay. You might see some YouTube videos still calling it Microsoft Azure, but it's now Microsoft Entra. And then the Microsoft Entra ID used to be called Microsoft Azure AD before. So where do you begin, right? The tenant. I created this pyramid for myself, right? It's how I understand the whole ecosystem. Um, the tenant is what you get when you say, I want to use Microsoft's identity provider. Microsoft will give you a tenant, right? And say, take this space as your own, right? So you live in a compound that there are 6 flats, you're all tenants, but you have control over that's either your 3-bedroom or your 4-bedroom duplex or your 3-bedroom flat. You have control over whatever. So you do the decor and everything yourself. You customize who has access, right? And then sitting on top of that tenant, you buy a subscription. The subscription is what tells you the type of Microsoft services that you get, right? So you have your smart TV. Your smart TV will put these different apps, but the fact that those apps are there, yes, it comes with some default functionality, but it doesn't automatically give you things like Netflix and Prime videos, right? But you can see the apps there, Disney Plus. And so what do? You go and subscribe to Netflix so that you can now consume Netflix services, even though your smart TV came pre-built with the Netflix app and the Prime Video app. You get it? So the Microsoft Entra suite, right? Would you say I want to use Microsoft solution? Microsoft will provision the tenant for you, but then you need to subscribe, right? To say I want subscription, this and this is what I want. I want XYZ type of license. I want M365. I want Power BI Professional. I want all of these things, and it will give you. And once it gives you those services, it will now sitting on top of those services give you the required licenses, right? That you can use, so you can have a family bouquet license that allows you to put more than 4 users. You can have a type of license that only one person, one device. I'm now using for the TV, but in Microsoft, you now have the different licenses based on, again, what your organization needs it for. So we have the E3, E5, F5, front, different type of license. Microsoft has a whole licensing. There are people that their career is licensing managing, and they're earning 6, 7 figures interpreting Microsoft licensing because organizations pay huge amount for this license. I recently, okay, no, not like recently, I think that was a year ago, we did a restructuring and revamping for an organization that saved them almost 200, K euro per year on licensing and consuming Microsoft licensing. Because again, from an identity perspective, we understood how the identity is flying around, because for every identity you create, it's either you give the person a license or you don't, right? And so if you don't structure, so now you see that activity we just finished doing. If you don't do it well, what's going to happen is that you're going to be giving everybody a license, and an organization is going to be paying too much money. And when auditors come, right? When auditors come and they're trying to drive costs down, they will say, "Oh, IT, you're very expensive." And IT will look at their budget, and IT will come to identity and say, "You guys are expensive. Cut down this thing." The only way you can cut it is when you understand these identities that we're giving all this license. Does everybody need the E5? E5 is 25 quid. F3 is 2 quid. Maybe this type of users, which are called long-term leavers, people who go 3 months, people who go 6 months. Is there a way we can create some workflow and attributes that can move them, that when they go on leave, they will move away from that E5 license that is 25 quid and move to the license of 5 quid. I think that's how you save your organization some money. So we play around the licensing, we call it licensing design and structuring, because Microsoft doesn't give anything for free. No, Microsoft doesn't give anything for free. So there's what they call the true up. Every year, Microsoft goes to organizations that are using these services and says, "I know you're using my services. I need to audit you." It's in the SLA. They are legally allowed to do that. Microsoft is legally allowed to walk into organization and say, "I know you're using my solution by virtue of this contract, right, that I put out there, that everybody is using my solution. I have, based on this, I have the right to audit you to confirm that my licenses that you're using." However, what they normally do, the contract says that they'll give you 6 months to get ready for them. So when Microsoft writes you, and it's not only Microsoft, trust me, all the OEM providers, they have that clause in their documentation. Again, we don't read, right? So that clause allows them come, and when they come, they will now do the audit. And then if they see you now say, "Oh, I paid for 20 licenses," they say, "But we can see you're using 30. You don't have to give me the balance of 10." So that's why I tell you that some people, their career, this is their job. They sit down, look for the big guys, look for companies that consume their services, using it very well, and then they sit down, write to these companies, we're coming to do our audit, and then the company that has to get an independent auditor that will come and make sure that they've cleaned, and if they meet all the terms and policies. So Microsoft will say you can use our license, but when we come and audit you in the last 90 days, any license you have used in the last 90 days, you pay for it, and then you find out. So they come back to, so companies come back to organizations and say, "Give me your specialist in licensing and identity. Let them come and check what we are doing and advise us so that we don't pay." So they'll rather, imagine a company that you saved paying 200K per year, right? And they've been paying that for the last 3 years. And you only ask them to pay you 200K to help them clean up, and they would never pay 200K in another 5 years. Very good business justification. You get a contract, you go do it. So that's how we create models, like opportunities to do the job that we do. But anyway, this is how it cascades. So the tenant will give you the subscription, and then the subscription opens up all the Microsoft services, which by default gives you a license. So that's why you can have all these services, have license, but you're not still giving it to everybody in the organization. So some of you will sit down in the office and you'll be like, how come my colleague has Microsoft 365 Copilot and I don't have it? Well, yes, they need to make sure that your job requires you to use it, right? Uh, because there's a cost and a license to it, that kind of a thing. So you find out that there's some licenses that you have. How come this person is giving a corporate phone, but I'm not giving a corporate phone, right? Well, because of their job. And there's a license cost to that phone beyond even buying the phone, to protecting the phone, to securing it and locking it down. There's a license cost. And so that license cost needs to be justified, right? And then before it now falls down to the identity. So you see how identity plays a role back to the tenant that you have set up. Any questions? So your top level security and boundary is your tenant. So why did I put this here? We need to understand that before you even start doing all those configurations that we just talked about, you need to secure your top level boundary. So we're going to look at the requirement. Once you get your tenant, some little configurations you need to do at the tenant level just to secure some little bit of branding. Then the containers and the resources. So the guys that are learning Titi's class, you see that there's still a bit of security there. So Titi will teach them how when they spin up a virtual machine, and they should still be able to, secure the virtual machine. The virtual machine should not allow port 3389 as public. The virtual machine should not allow, 443 without firewall, and those kind of little things. Because at the subscription level too, you need to make sure that you lock down, some of your security there, right? And then what type of service? So you still see the guys who are doing exchange. I'm sure you have some of your friends, family members who are exchange expert, Teams expert, SharePoint expert, OneDrive expert. You can see our guys, the Power Platform and Power BI, right? These are now services. But setting up all those services, we need to lock down and secure those platforms, right? So, and then sitting on top of that is the license, how you allocate the license to this identity, and then the final, identity. Your identity is now your users, your groups, your out, everything else, on this layer that needs to talk. So your identity will either require a license or not require a license. Your identity will either require a conditional access policy, which is also tied to a license. So you might not give you a license, but you might want to use conditional access policy, which is tied to a license. Right? So you might not, I might have Teams, but I might not require a planner, right? And I might not require even Power BI. I might never have to use Power BI. I might never have to even consume a Power BI dashboard, right? But I use SharePoint. So different services based on your use case, your users in your organization, and then the type of subscriptions that you get, and then they sit off the tenant. So once we buy our Microsoft, once we say Microsoft, I want to use your solution and we get it, the basic thing you want to do is you want to customize it to your domain. So Microsoft will first of all give you this tenant, and the tenant will have a default domain name. How many of you know what domain name is? Let me say a response with yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. If you know what the word domain name means in tech, permit me 1 minute. I'm going to mute myself so I can. Nobody knows where it's stuffy, but why I'm doing that, please quickly let me see if you know what domain. If you know what domain name is in the chat. All right, I'm back. So quick, crash course, 2 seconds for what domain name is. When you buy your company, if you register a company today, Chisom and Sons Limited, now your company that you registered, for example, if you're in Nigeria, you have to go and register it with CAC, right? And when you register it, you want people to know you. And it's the same thing online. How are we going to know you online? We need a company. So you will go and you go to what we call the domain registers. So there are people that are called domain registers. And you will say, I want to also register my company online. Right? I want my company to have this brand online. this Chisom and Sons Limited, I have gone to my country corporate affairs and I've registered it based on my country's requirements. But in the digital world, right, I want my company to be present in the digital world. So we have textilers. When we started, we didn't have a domain. Well, along the line, we're like, our brand is growing. So we went and we got a domain called textilers.com. It could be anything, textilers.ca, whatever you want to call it, right? But we say when you come online and you want to identify who we are, right, as textilers, you go to textilers.com. And that's why sitting on the domain name, you can now put your website or a landing page that people can see who you are. So when Microsoft gives you a tenant, right, they just give you a tenant that has a domain prefix. We call it onmicrosoft.com. So that's what I've highlighted there. You just see onmicrosoft.com. And then they give you an account called a global admin account. It will be your super account, right? You want to customize this in real life. You don't just want to use that prefix, right? You want so that when you're now creating your staffs, they would not have the custom email. So that's why whatever organization you see your friend who just got a new job and comes to tell you, oh, Chiso, I just got a new job with Origo Limited, I'm their, head of social media marketing. Wow, what's your email? My email is chisom.chuku@origolimited.com, right? That's it. So it makes more sense rather than chisom, dot chuku at origo at or microsoft.origo.com. It becomes funny. So that's just what it is. Microsoft gives you the tenant with the default, and then you now add your own custom. So why am I putting it out there? Because some of you might have to work with small companies, right? Again, remember the essence for this training is not to say everybody's going to work with the big fours and the big, is to equip you with a skill that is relevant. Some of you are going to, after this training, create your own business model that you start selling to those small, that supermarket like Blanco, that's all those small shops, they're called retail business, 5 user, 10-man user, the eatery, the restaurant, right? You can start to show them the benefit of using the content creator. There are so many type of license structures that will fit into their business model and they'll be happy with you because now they can put all these controls and guardrails, right? So the first thing you want to do is customize the tenant and add the custom domain. Like the way to log it into, Entra ID would be portal.azure.com. So if you take your phone today and go to any browser and type portal.azure.com, it's also going to give you a landing page asking you to put your username and password, right? So remember when I talked about the tenant. So everybody lands on portal.azure.com. Everybody will land there. But the account you use to log in is what will now take you to your tenant, to your subscription, to your services, to your licenses, and then your identity. You get what I'm saying? So always customize, and put the custom domain. When you come in here, now there are two places. You can put the custom domain in Microsoft Entra ID, which is here, or you can put the custom domain in the Microsoft 365. Now, Microsoft is they are very, very wonderful. Don't let them blow your head. They have so many moving parts here and there. So the Microsoft Entra ID is there, but there's a service. There's a service. So remember the chain I gave you? I said tenant subscription service. There's a service called the Microsoft 365 that has so many other things Microsoft do. Your friends that have Exchange Career, they're there. Email, SharePoint, PowerPoint, OneDrive, they're there. Now, Microsoft still allows you to do some of the things you do in the Entra from a management perspective inside the M365 admin. So you're going to be seeing where some roles and some permissions, instead of us to configure it in Entra, we'll have to go to the M365. It's Microsoft's own way of saying that because these services, right, are not Azure services. Remember where I told you that the former name used to be Azure, the main bucket, and in Azure there are XYZ there, but Microsoft still has what it calls the M365 service, right? It has said that if you have the M365 service, come here and do this kind of management, right, rather than do it in your Entra. Don't get it. Don't beat yourself. It's Microsoft. They will sleep and wake up. Just yesterday, I found out something new. Before we could add licensing group, I'll show you in Entra. And so when I was just trying to test one of the demo, the Microsoft put it there. You have to go to M365 to add a license to a licensing group. It wasn't like that before. So somebody said that the currency of her learning tech in recent time is a 6 months rate, meaning that every 6 months what she has learned has become obsolete and she needs to learn it again. And I almost would agree with her. So don't beat yourself to it. That's it. But just know that when it comes to managing identities, right? So what I will scribble in your notes if I were you is simple. There are two places to manage identities in Microsoft: the Microsoft Entra ID and the Microsoft M365 admin. You manage identities to in those two places. This is how the first one looks like. You go into portal.azure.com. Microsoft will give you a global admin account, but please, when we go, I think it's in our next class, we're going to learn about privilege identity management. If you're going to work for a small company, just make sure that the global admin, you understand, you see how we're going to teach you how to secure the global admin, because the global admin, that is the pata of them all. If a hacker hijacks your global admin, Otilo. So you need to, yes, Microsoft can help you, but the person will get access to everything and everything, right? So you want to understand how to secure your global admin. But when Microsoft sets you up, they give you a global admin and expect you to, do what you need to do. The second place to manage would be your M365 admin, which is called admin.microsoft.com. Again, you'll be a global admin, but just make sure. But if you go to a properly structured organization, you will not be giving global admin. You either be giving security admin. Security admin also is a privileged account that you'll be letting our desk class. Our desk class, we're going to start with privilege identity, look at PIM, just-in-time access, and all of that. And so you see how to configure that and how you can request access to a privileged role. And when you are done using it, the access will go back and your account is free from that pressure. Any questions, please? So let's begin to look at how we are going to manage, remember we called it tenants. Don't forget, keep it in your head, keep it in your head. Let me just do one more flash. If you want to take a picture of it, you want to take a screenshot, please. This guy, put it, tenant, subscription, services, license, identity. Because you'll be hearing this terminology. Again, like I said, I'm expecting somebody, one of the things you put in your content and visibility is called my IAM glossary, Microsoft Identity, because I've been using so many terminologies here that I expect you to start having like a glossary. Somebody says, can different tenants share the same Azure Active Directory, and what are the security risks if not properly isolated? You can have what we call tenant. You can have you see it in a setting called cross tenant settings, right? So you can have tenant A, tenant B, and there's a form of communication, right? So yes, you can different tenants. They're I won't say they're really they're not sharing. So when you say Active Directory, are you talking about the on-prem? So let's be careful. There's nothing like Azure Active Directory again. Oh. Are you referring to Entra? Are you referring to former Azure, um, which is from? Are you referring to Entra ID? Sorry, the naming change is confusing me. But what I understand your question is, I have two tenants, right? Okay, Entra ID. Thank you, Tony. Yes, so I have two tenants. Your tenant, each tenant has his own Entra ID. Understand it like that. Anytime you spin up a tenant with Microsoft, Microsoft will give that tenant its own Entra ID. But you want to do cross management or cross communication, right? So there's a setting here that you need to do to put controls. What you want to ask yourself is, the person who is the global admin, what can they do? And the person who is the security admin here, what can they do? So when you do tenant to tenant configuration, you want to just go back again to do, that's what we call your privilege identity model. We'll learn that in privilege identity next class. Who has access to what and what can the person do? That's why that first class, first session where we talked about different types of internal and external is very important. So can they share the same? Not necessarily that they are sharing the same, but they can be connected to where I'm an admin here and I'm the same admin managing this place, but it's actually different accounts, right? Because when you set up your tenant has his own account, but you can do tenant where when I provision the user here, the user can't be able to access resources here and do stuffs here based on what policies I configure. I hope that and then what are the risks? Like I explained, the risk could be that you want to ask yourself, this my staff that is here, do I want the person to also be a super user, a privileged user here, so that you can make sure? So that's where we apply the zero trust least privilege. So the risk is that if you don't do your proper model well, you'll mistakenly give privileged users access to the other tenant that they don't need. So I don't know if I answered your question. If not, please let me know so that we can take it again. So I just put it as a flashback so that we can get familiar with it. Tony, I'd like to know if I answered your question. All right, so We're going closer now. We're going to soon log into the portal that I'm sure you can see. So there's something we call the tenant wide setting. Once you have your tenant, you want to do, again, these are our recommendations, right? You spawn up your tenant, don't just say, oh, my tenant is up, jump to users, right? You want to do some kind of configuration. Sorry, guys. So you want to do some kind of configuration. You want to ask yourself, there's some settings that Microsoft has left default. For example, Microsoft has this setting where they say, do you want to allow people sign into your tenant with their LinkedIn profile? In some organizations, it would be a data violation, right? Remember, you want to set up your tenant in line with what your organization's business is and how they're expected to provide data. Now, this training will show value to some of you who currently, because I know currently in Nigeria, the Nigerian data protection is becoming big. And so many people who used to process data, but they have a central identity system, will listen to you now when you bring whatever proposal you have. So you want to also set up that tenant in line with whatever data protection policy that they need to adhere to. So when you come to the tenant wide setting, there are some settings here you either want to turn off, or you want to move. Signing with LinkedIn is it's optional, but you want to turn it off or turn it on depending on your organization. So organizations like it because maybe their business is advertising. They want that every staff has some presence. And that people that their KPI is tied to LinkedIn, how much they post, how much they interact, what they do. Why some people like it's two different life. We have policies that say when you're talking about things on the internet, you need to be able to make it very clear that you're speaking it as yourself and not representing the organization. So some organizations, they don't want this because they want it to be very clear when you're on the internet as you and not as a company, right? And so, but this setting exists, tenant-wide setting, we'll be looking at it and what you need to configure, what you need to edit, can a user have the power to automatically install an app? Why Microsoft is making things very flexible, you're looking at the security. So Microsoft has allowed people to be able to, just because they have access as a user, go into maybe Teams and spawn up an app. But you can say, okay, what's the disadvantage of this to us as an organization? And you want to turn it up at the tenant level. You also want to restrict who can invite guests, right? Who can say we can invite, can everybody invite guests? Or only certain people are allowed to invite guests? If not, people can just stay and spawn up and invite their friends, and their friends can have access to company data because they wanted to use Teams, and Teams seems like the only platform. So there's a setting and configuration called tenant-wide setting that is important that we look at when you set up your tenant. Yeah, one of the things you want to do, Tony, is what we're talking about. So you want to look at what your tenant-wide settings are, and then you look at also the cross-tenant settings that we're looking at. So that's why I'm not just jumping into user creation. The first thing you want to do once you have your tenant is look at your tenant-wide settings. What are the configuration? Who can invite guests? So you look at things like this, the tenant properties, right? Where's your data located? So you can see your data location. So remember, if your business is in EU, you know what the EU says. EU doesn't want their data out of EU, right? So if you're setting up a tenant for a company that is doing a business in EU, you don't want to spawn up a tenant that the data, because Microsoft will tell you when they're keeping your data, that the data is stored in out of EU. The same thing with Africa. Africa is now coming up. So if you know, I think Microsoft is spawning up data centers now in South Africa. Beyond even network proximity and optimization from a data protection perspective. So countries are very strict on where is your data kept, because those places where you have your data kept, they have some government laws that automatically mandates the service provider to allow the government access your data. I see it. So that's why some countries are very, very particular. So you want to look at things like these properties, your privacy policy too. You want to publish your privacy policy or your tenants. What that will do for you is that if anybody is pulling up any type of application, they don't need to worry about the privacy policy. The default privacy policy of your organization, which is what your organization stands for, would show as the privacy statement. So these are just, they look like little, but they are not little when we begin to have cyber incidents and we're trying to trace down, right, who should be contacted if there's anything with your tenant ID. Very little things like that, right? So you set up the tenants, but what if you leave the organization tomorrow, right? So you put the name of Tosi, Tosi set up the tenant nice. But what if Tosi leaves this organization, or Tosi grows, that this company that was a 5 user, 10 user was nice, but now Tosi is so busy and he's no more doing business with them. So you want to set this up with the proper right contact, for the business. You want to put this around incident response, who's responsible for tenants, who's responsible for the contact of the tenant. You want to do all of this security. And then you want to look at the permissions and consents rather for the big members and member and external users and the application and devices. There are settings here again in the tenant that allows you to either restrict permissions or augment permissions, who can do what, who can invite, who can search for a group, who can change a password, who can read properties, who has access to be able to read people's properties, who can join a device to domains. All of these settings are here. Please, am I audible enough? I feel I sound cracky to myself. I hope I'm audible today, guys. Yeah, I have a very bad cold. All right. So another setting that you want to edit is called user settings, right? If you go to the user settings, again, you want to see things, because by default, you see things like users can add any application. Do you know what? Do you know? So let me play the scenario of that. Users can add. Now you've recruited Joy. Joy has become a disgruntled staff, and Joy has been poached by one of all these potential attackers, right? And all they need is that they said, Joy, look at this graphic API, right? Publish it in your company. All it would do is it would say it is a social interaction. Maybe your company is open to, come up with nice ideas, interact, and to say it's a trade by barter kind of app where colleagues can come and trade. I have stuffs in my house that I don't use and they're still good. I will upload it there. And then if you have stuffs you're not using, you upload it there and we share. And you came up with that idea. And the organization did not have a process as to how you can publish an app in the application. So I go and I publish this app and everybody's excited. The engagement is massive. It's building team bonding, it's sprinkling all shades of innovation. But sitting in that component, my friend that gave me, so I could even be innocent, I was just discussing my G over some fish in the water side, and I was like, and my G says, I have this idea, right? Where imagine people have stuffs in their house that they're not using, right? And they could just upload it in this app, and other people have stuff. By the way, I know I'm giving you guys ideas. All the business ideas I'm giving people in this training, people should start paying me consulting fee. Anyway, back to serious gist. And then the guy says, I'm interested. You say, I've already compiled the app, right? And then they give you the app and you just come. Now, because in your tenant, it was not said that it was allowed that users can register an application. I go, boom, I spawn it up. Meanwhile, sitting behind that is that when people come, it's going to ask them to use their tenant, right? Because remember, I've created as an internal app. So it's going to ask them to use their username and passwords. And somewhere there's a script that's going to take out those people's password and harvest it. I don't know. Now I published it and I come to the general, office teams and I'm putting, guys, I have this. Everybody goes, wow, people are seeing stuff that they don't have and they are getting it free of charge. And that person, just by swapping, is building engagement. Maybe in the office tomorrow, they even bring out an award, nominate best team bonding member, best team bonding guy. Everybody was, you're feeling like a G. Just is on point, is the G. Everybody's, man, that your idea, man. You want innovation of the year idea in the office. But you even get an award. Maybe they give you 500K. Wow, you're feeling fly. This thing is happening 6 months. Everything is working. 1 year, everything is working. 2 years down the line, boom, there's a cyber breach. The CFO's account has been compromised. And money has been moved from one account. Everybody's freaking out. Investigation starts. And somehow, because we found out that all this we start to see conversations, because it is when incidents happen we get to look at triggers and like, okay, do we have applications that have sensitive and have ability to be able to share, and then they see it? Who owns this application? IT is like, we don't know. How can you not know? We don't know. And then they bring external auditors like myself, to come. We know where to start. We come from your tenant. How did you set up your tenant? We don't even go to the incident. When incidents happen, we don't, because we can't kill ourselves. We're not Jesus. We're not spirit. So we know that it's something that's going on. Can we see your tenants? Can we see how you set it up? Can you see? Because once we see where the gaps are, then it throws our thought pattern to how and what the issues are. So if I see a tenant that has this kind of thing, users can't register application. What it tells me is that if I go to your enterprise application settings, I should be able to see lots of applications that you don't know who owns it, because you have allowed users set up applications either without admin consent, and so they can set it up. This is how you begin to think security and identity beyond just create user, add user. You need to ask yourself, nice innovation, nice, everybody's happy, but this time, so we call that shadow IT, where staffs become IT. They create applications, they install them. It's good for innovation, but how do we balance innovation? So maybe you want to now put that users can do that, but maybe to go through admin consent. Are you seeing it? And then in the admin consent, please, maybe you put an email. So when it goes there, it will not go approval. Recently the WhatsApp group that Textiles has been growing so well, but in recent times, we started finding out that as we grew, we started becoming open to attackers and people who come in to harvest people's phone numbers. A couple of things have happened over the weekend. We're trying to fix it. And so what did I just do? I just went to the WhatsApp group of the data security and I switched on that. Yes, you want to join, you will click, but when you join, you wait for approval. Let's even know who you are. Because remember, we sent out emails, we said do this, and then all of a sudden people are now trying to join. Who are these new people trying to join? What's the approval? Are they new people that were cleared? Are they gotten their clearance from the admin? Are they new people? Let's know. Rather than just leave the group and you are happy, you are excited about what you are learning, you carry our link, go and give your cousin, sister, brother, who you just finished having fish and chicken by the poolside. I said, oh, there's this community I found out, free training, guy. This training is worth 200K. They give us the training free. I go take join. See the link, join the group, Jare, Oshe. When you join, free training, good. Your guy joins us and they start harvesting the phone numbers of our members. We don't like that. So what have we done? We've put a control to say, yes, we're open, we're not charging you, but we need to secure the identity of those people who have trusted us for the next 8 weeks to stay with us. Your phone number is your identity. And through your phone number, somebody can harvest your phone number because you're in this training and begin to spam you. Use your phone number, begin to find your BVN and all those loopholes that are with all these services. Are you seeing it? So you see the concept. But when we set this up, we're excited to give you free training. But we did think end to end. But now somebody has made us see, wait, there seems to be a gap. We have people joining here just taking people's phone numbers and trying to spam them. So now you can't just take our link of our groups and share with your friends anymore. When you give them, they will stay in the pool and we'll have to verify who this person is before we approve. If not, it will stay at the door forever and ever. We will not open that door for them. Is it making sense to you now? So that's why it's important to do these configuration settings, right? On your tenants before you even start worrying about setting up your users. So if you currently work in an organization and your team is responsible for this, and even if you don't have access to make changes, just go and do an audit review, and then write and say, if you're an auditor in the new world, auditor that is still using old audit checklist of old school to come and audit cloud platform, radical great user. These are the kind of things you should be checking. Has the organization created this kind of configurations? Add this. You could develop a raw book, for your visibility. Develop a raw book on how to set up your tenants and ensure your tenant is secure. These are all the foundational things you need to do to make sure that your identity is secure. Any questions? Thank you, Tony. Tony says, if I were designing a security first deployment strategy from scratch, how will I prioritize and phase in protections across these 5 layers? What 5 layers? Sorry, Tony, I'm not that intelligent. Some of these big grammars. If you could just help me break it down. So, which 5 layers? Can you specify? Is it the 5 layers? Are you talking about the security, the first 5 layers? Give me some context, please. Help me here. What are some security best practices specifically for tenant-wide settings that organizations often overlook? Like what I just told you, that one of the security settings that they often overlook is that they allow users to be able to create applications. This setting is by default. If you get your tenant, spawn up your tenant now, Microsoft doesn't turn it off for you. If you remember back in the days, if you set up your tenant, Microsoft does not turn NMFA for your admin. Over the years, because of compromise, Microsoft has now enforced it. Once you are an administrator, you see that global account that they give you, it forces you to put MFA. Before it wasn't. Microsoft will leave you and people will just fly like that. They won't put MFA, they won't do anything. In fact, okay, I can't say that because I can't remember if it is under public preview or private. So sorry, forget what I want to say. But the point is, Microsoft, that's how they keep modifying and modifying and modifying. So sorry, suppose I privilege to Microsoft release under private preview. I have to always remember confidentiality clause when something is still under private preview. You're not allowed to say it in public. So I just remembered, and I haven't checked, so I can't say what I wanted to say. But this kind of configuration is always left empty. The MFA one, Microsoft has fixed it now. By default, once your account is set up and you're logging in with Global, it will force you to put MFA. Many people don't do it. So by the time you're now telling them they've gotten compromised and you're now trying to get users to do MFA, there's a whole learning curve, right? So to answer you, the best security practices that tenant-wide settings leave is they leave users to be able to spot up applications, creating lots of shadow ITs. They leave users, they allow guests to be able to share files that they don't own. So your business model says that we want guests. So somebody comes from the business team, she's bringing in her numbers, 100 million, 200 million. So she has this wonderful project where she's like, I want my retailers to be able to consume XYZ. I don't care, give me the numbers. And your boss is breathing down on you. And you're like, who are retailers? Retailers are external, okay? She wants them to have access to what, okay? What are they supposed to be able to do? And then you forget that at the tenant setting, you have already set that guests should be able to share files they don't own. You need to sit back and say, okay, now that this new business model we did not have before has come on, and this new business model will introduce a type of users that we did not have before, can I go back to our tenant to see the implication of introducing guests to our tenant now and what that implies? And then you can come back and flag to your city boss, we have this setting though. So we need to turn it off when guests can, because now we're going to allow guests come into our tenants, but we don't want them share files they don't own. So these are some of them. And you could take that as a task for yourself to do a bit of review. I'm happy to do a second eye for you as you want to create a run book on best practices for setting up tenant-wide settings for organizations. Yeah, and you could have a caption as 5 settings that organizations overlook when they set up their tenants in Microsoft Entra ID. I've given you a post for next week. But yes, come and spend time on your tenant settings, user settings, cross-management settings, group settings, and you will see lots of things that people overlook when they set up. Another one here is external collaboration settings. This is another one. In this setting, you will see here, you can see get users have the same access to members. You haven't even started creating the user, so just the tenant configuration is already saying that once you create any type of guest user, that guest user automatically has the same rights as a member. And maybe your business model, you're going to be heavy on lots of guest users, and you have not come here to restrict it to say no, right? Guest users can invite. So you need to sit down as an organization, understand what you want to do, and then come and make these settings here. After users can register applications, we talked about this one. Administration portal, restrict access to Entra. You see this Entra portal, I just told you, portal.azure. There's a setting there that says that anybody can have access to portal.azure. Right? You want to also restrict that only administrators can have access to portal.azure. Another setting we have here is groups. This one, not too much of a security is at first instance, but in the long run, and I'll give you how. So you get to have people say, create group for me. I want to use this group for this. Create groups. Does the group allow it to be public or internal? There's a certain group that is just for the business. Don't forget, when hackers are trying to hack, remember we said in the hackers login, they spend time doing social engineering on your organization, and there's some default group naming structure that exists. Remember, your website already tells a hacker your domain name by default. First Bank Nigeria dot whatever. It already tells me that if I want to know how the email system in First Bank works, right? If I go to their website, I'll see some emails there. It'll give you some structure. Every company has emails like hello at this. Every company has info at this. These are some naming conventions that by default the company we have. So when you send, every company will send out statements. If you go and check your bank statement when you get it, you will see that your bank statement is coming with a relayed email address called no reply or something. Because by default, you will send out email statement. So imagine if that email alias could receive email. So by design, those email addresses don't receive email. Go and check your last statement that was sent and try to just reply to the email that will bounce back. It's very interesting. It's intentional because we know that we push mass emails, right, to people. And so social engineering, an organization can sit there, a hacker can sit and say, okay, let me send an email here. And somebody in the team who is not very mature on the cybersecurity clicks on it. So those kind of mailboxes, email relays, don't have mailboxes, can't keep emails, can't receive email. So if you bring it back to groups, you want to put group settings here that talk about who can set up a group. If a group, doesn't have a group owner, how do we know? Because if a group doesn't have a group owner, it means that anybody can enter that group. Does a group go through an approval? So a group has been set up. I want to have access to that group. Who do I go for approval, right? Just like what we did with the WhatsApp group. So that's the same concept that Microsoft has with groups, right? The same thing with group membership. So again, a project has been finished. Everybody has left that group, or people have left that group. That group still exists there with access to a SharePoint site, right? But everybody has left the organization, and that group has a setting where you can join the group without notifying anybody. So this user comes into the organization and is playing around and joins the group and sees that repository, because the project was trying to do a dashboard for management, somehow it has an export of all the executives, their salary. Or it was a SharePoint site that was created for an investigation that involved an affair between two colleagues. And the images that they got from that investigation, they put it in that SharePoint report. But investigation was done, and the people who did the investigation even left and resigned. But there was no process built around that group to notify us that when people leave that groups and it doesn't have any membership, this is what you do: group expiration. Now, out of curiosity, I joined the group because the group also has a setting that says I can join group without approval. And because I've joined that group, it automatically allows me to see a SharePoint site, especially even now with Copilot, right? So I have a Copilot license. I have joined the group. I could just say, Copilot, can I know all the SharePoint sites that I have access to? And boom, I see it. And I see this one that has interesting investigation something or disciplinary committee. I go to the site and boom, I'm reading what I should read. Guys, it's mind-blowing what the wrong design of an identity can do to an organization. And so that's why it's very important that these configurations are done properly at the root level before you begin to progress. Any questions? So you want to look at, again, group expiration. Groups should expire, right? Even if it is forever and ever, right? You should put it there. Who should receive an email when a group has expired? What's your naming policy? I didn't know about this one, and I don't think it's new, but I didn't know about it. That Microsoft can even allow you automate the naming policy at which you create groups, so that you can know who owns a group and what a group is for, right? Cross-tenant access control. This is speaking to your question, to some of your questions, Tony. Yeah, again, default, applies to all external collaboration. You want to do cross-tenant, you want to restrict tenant to tenant, domain to domain. You don't want to leave it open. You don't want to say, I want to talk to every tenant. No, you want to add it very specific. OrigoLimited.com wants to be able to talk to TonyLimited.com. And so if I have not whitelisted TonyLimited.com as a tenant I want to interact with, even though I have the external collaboration settings, I would not be able to. I want to be very specific, to the kind of organization tenants that I have outbound conversations with and inbound. So this is where you do cross-tenant synchronization. What you can do, can I from this tenant create users and automatically it creates the other tenant. So this is where I'm telling you, and then you can bound and conditional access control to it. So spend time to look at your cross-tenant settings, right? And you would see how to do it. This one we cannot allow you do as test because you're all going to be shared tenants, right? You're all going to be shared tenants. So if, for example, Tony is practicing this and Joy is practicing, we'll be conflicting ourselves. So we only just teach this to expose you to configurations that need to be done. So that when if you on your own set up a demo Azure platform, you can play around this. But the tenants we're going to give you access to work. That's why we will not even give you the ability to be able to make changes at tenant level, because everybody cannot be doing this kind of, you can't test this kind of scenario, because remember what I showed you, tenant is at the root. Tenant affects everybody. So if you go and make a change, you automatically affect everybody using that tenant. And if I come back again because I want to test my own at it will just be messy. So we only just teach this and say, when you set up your own Azure platform, you can go and spawn Azure. Azure gives you free 200 credits to use on how to set up your own Azure. I will recommend that you do it after the program so that you don't lose time. Use our own tenant for this next 8 days and practice. And then when you are done learning, when our program is over, then you can go and set up the free Azure, the Azure platform that gives you 200 credit to play around with. Most times you might not even use the credit if you're not spawning on virtual machines and all of that. If you just to play around identity and some of these things, you might not. Then there are lots of trial. They'll give you 30 days trial, 90 days trial, or some additional licenses that you can do stuff. I would recommend not to do it now. Use our own and practice for the next 2-3 months, because after the program, after 90 days, I think we shut it down. We take it away from you, and then you can now say, okay, I have played enough now. I want to now go and set up my own. So that if you are doing with a trial method of 30 days, you're not wasting it still trying to understand. I hope you get what I'm saying. Yeah. So you will be able to test this. All right. Now, just to call out, you would be giving global admin access for your labs because it's a super user. However, if you need to set this up for a small company, like I've said, by default, once you set up a tenant, you become a global admin. For this textilers program, I am waiting on the coordinators, right? This week, I know that that's what all of us will be doing this week. We'll be taking out the list, I'll be creating accounts for you, and it will be part of what you will get in your email or maybe in the WhatsApp group on how you will log into, because it's when we group you for the project and we know how to put you in tenants, right? That you will use to test, right? I don't know why you're putting your email here, Chibugu. If there's an attendance sheet, if that's why you're putting it, there's an attendance sheet. Don't just drop your emails in chat. All right, quick. Now, this is how the dashboard of Entra. I'm going to go to live dashboard, but I just wanted to. This is how the live dashboard you will see different types of users here. Uh, uh, and you will see a user type, whether a user is a member. You will see whether the user is on the cloud or whether the user is on-prem. Each user itself, a user has his own user settings. So which group am I belonging to? What location do I where or am I configured? Right. Some organizations set up users without locking locations. Good. Some organizations set up users and lock locations. Where I currently work, they lock us in locations, right? Because I work from anywhere, but I am locked to a location. So I can't just pick up my bag and fly back to Nigeria and work from Nigeria. Automatically, it will lock me out, right? So that they can know that I am still within the country, even though they have said I can work from anywhere, right? I can work from my toilet, work from anywhere, nobody's stopping me, but it has to be in this location, in this region. You get what I'm saying? So you can do all of those configurations. And the good thing is it allows it when you're setting policies. So we have areas that are flagged as high risk areas, whether you like it or not, there are some areas and countries and regions that are high risk for fraud, high risk for cyber attacks. So you want to do location tagging to your staffs just so that in case you see a credential coming from a high risk, identity, you can trigger it for controls. You'll be doing lots around security, around attributes. And what's attributes? Attributes is what allows you to play around people. Joy is so if you look at some of the examples we gave, we said create a test user account, but this test user account should be able to do XYZ. Those things are what you use to define attributes. This person is coming for a 3 months project in the marketing department, right? So the attributes could be maybe contract staff, or the attributes could be temporary staff, those kind of things. Join the full-blown staff, full staff, so attributes allow you, because when you want to start putting entitlements and all of that, is those attributes that will allow you to be able to put certain conditions. So again, you can manage your attributes and configure attributes where they want to do, where they need to be. And another thing for users you want to see is grouping. So we have users and identity, but we also play around with groups because you need to make your life easy. When we start creating users, you see how it doesn't make sense. Imagine an organization that has to create 1,000 users. I get to do it manually and add users manually. So why you will learn that? That's not a real life scenario, right? It's only going to be for very small companies where there are 1 users, 5 users. Real big organizations that are dealing with 10,000 users, 20,000 users, you will be doing those things manually, right? So, but that's where groups come in. There are certain things you want to do groups. So imagine a bank that every year they do graduate training programs and they recruit at least between 50 to 100 people, right? So when they send that list to you, create these users. I get to be sending one by one, right? And put them in a group because HR wants to be sending them emails and notifications, right? So that's the importance of group. Group allows you to give people permissions and policy in a group rather than one by one, right? The MD wants to send an email to all staff, right? You want to have an all staff group. Imagine having an all staff email address that is open to the public. And somebody mistakenly said, now hackers know that every organization have a group that is called all staff at whatever, because the MD is never going to type people's email one by one. He's going to come and send an email all staff, right? The CFO, the HR, excellent. So imagine that your all staff email address has that setting that says can be reached from outside, turned on. And somebody just spams, there will always be one person in the organization that just know that person is just that person is just in fact. That's how we just describe that person. That person is just in fact, and that person will click on it and you begin to. So this is how one configuration here can hamper. So the importance of group cannot be overrated. We use group to organize users, make it easier to manage permissions, but we also have settings, security settings that we need to turn on in order to ensure that we don't expose group. Now inside group, we have mail groups, dynamic group, distribution group. So distribution group is, this group only allows us to distribute, meaning that it doesn't keep the content in that group. It just puts all the users under it and then you distribute it. So it's like saying that I was still typing your email address 1-1, but because I don't want to type in 1-1, I just said there. Dynamic group is, I want people to be a member of this group, but I don't want to ever configure it after the first time I configure it. I only configure it once, and the group itself dynamically will be updating itself. That's what dynamic group is. Dynamic group is, I don't want to manually go and add. So anytime this person matches this condition, this person enters. So an example of a dynamic group would be a licensed birthright group, right? Which automatically gives you XYZ type of license. An example of a dynamic group would be a privilege access group, right? Where my privilege account has been created and my privilege account needs to automatically match a conditional access policy that says that I must use MFA. But that MFA policy was tied to a group. If you have to, what it means is that you are trusting that anytime people create a privilege account, they will remember to go and put the account in a group. You might have a SOP with step by step, but just what if people forget? So there are use cases that will require you to use dynamic group. So what I'm going to show you how to create is the projects are more around the design and conceptualizing this thing. So you can see a scenario where we say XYZ company is about to do blah blah blah, right? And they have 500 users, right? Recommend what type of grouping will be used and the syntax for the grouping. What I would expect you to do is you go as a team, you will go to your demo, you will create that dynamic group, and you will play around the logic and expressions that can populate 1 or 2 users, and then you will come back and present. So we now know that if it works for 1 user, it will work for 500 users. That's the kind of assignment that you'll be seeing, right? Where a scenario around what we're playing out, but we're not going to actually give you 500 users, because when we see 500 licenses, but you would have maybe 1 or 2 users as your licensed users to play around with, and then you can now create that logic. So if I say create a group where people are added to the organization, they automatically have XYZ license, right? So what that means is you're going to say what is unique to everybody, and what can we use as the expression for the dynamic group to check, and when it sees it, it will match it. I'll show that. Some things you can configure for group properties, group membership, roles. Again, like I said, who has roles to a group, who are going to be the members of this group. You can edit the properties. License is very key. I told you how the cost of licenses can't make an organization say they don't want to use cloud, or the organization begin to wonder whether the value is not, the cost is outweighing the value. And so you must understand how to categorize license. Now, this is not saying you should go and spend time studying different types of licensing. Where you come in as an identity is that the guys who have licensing as their tax will come to you and say, these are the number of licenses that we need to buy. These are how we need to work. HR will come and say, we have people who go on leave every 6 months, and we have people who go on leave every 3 months. This person will come and say, we have contract staffs who work with us this. You will now, based on that, build a licensing model, right? And you can now determine this model should work with a dynamic group, or this model should work with a directly assigned group. Again, that's how your assignments will be, for you to think about it, right? So you're not necessarily going to dream about the license. Now, don't forget that I've said that Microsoft will give you license that has so many things, right? But you want to use the services based on use cases. So imagine the marketing people coming and saying, we have some people who are going to do market rounds and we want them to be able to use the Microsoft Stream, and your organization might not be allowing Microsoft Stream because it can be bandwidth intensive. But this use case now for this market blast, this time I've got to management and presented that if we go and do this market blast, we'll be able to capture people's images and securely keep it in our tenants without people keeping it on their phone. So when they use the phone to take the picture, because the phone is linked to OneDrive, they'll be able to save it there, and then it would blah 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 blah. Now they come to you to say, what do we do? We don't enable OneDrive for everybody. But you see this use case, if we have OneDrive, then we don't have to worry about company data leaking when we go for this mass marketing blast, because it will be saved to OneDrive. So your design structure will be, who are these people going for this marketing blast? Right? Put them in a group, add them to a licensing group that has only OneDrive, right? And then validate it that that's it. Boom, we have done it. So those are the kind of things that will be thrown at you as an identity person, where the business is trying to make money, but they're expecting you as technology to help them, right? But also show them where the issues are, because they also are not thinking security. Right. So that's how another way that you look at it. Another way would be like, management is trying to drive costs. I had a use case where it wasn't Microsoft I used then, but this is like 5-10 years ago. But the use case is relevant with OneDrive. Senior executive management will always have board meetings, and they will print paper for them. Board meetings, paper. They will review it, view it, put their comments. The secretariat will take those comments, go and sit down one by one, and be typing the comments, right, on the main sheet for the company secretary to review all the comments and action. Just imagine how cumbersome that work is. But that's how it flew for years. Because some of these your executive directors who are very good in bringing in the numbers are not security gurus, are not technology gurus, but they know how to sit down in business negotiation meetings. And that's why they're sitting at the executive board, right? Now, the cost of printout and paper was done, and it was found out that this cost in XYZ year was massive. Now, beyond that, your company just recently brought out a business partnership with a company that is doing carbon zero, meaning that they're trying to say sustainable development. Meanwhile, your company generates paper waste of XYZ. I want you to understand how business and tech and IT works. So somebody is sitting at the board, and the IT representative at the board is saying, but you guys generate paper waste of XYZ. Meanwhile, we're going to the public and saying that we're trying to drive down carbon, whatever, and build sustainability. This shouldn't we start from home? So they throw it back to IT. IT, what should we do? So they come to you and say, we have the executive directors who need to be able to, from their phone, anywhere on any device, review these executive materials, put in their comments, and their comments can be reviewed and captured and secured, because their documents are sensitive. Remember, they're looking at business documents, looking at financials, and it should be highly secured so that nobody has access to print, copy, screenshot. Are you seeing that? Now they give you all these business cases. So you sit down as a team and then you design it. What do you say to them? Wow, we have Microsoft OneDrive. With Microsoft OneDrive, I can put the DLP labels. When we go into data security, you see what that will restrict people from printing, doing print screen, and all of that. We have user access control where we can create their identities, and they will only use the corporate emails to log in to look at it. We have the Microsoft Office apps that can allow them edit this on their phones and on their app, and it to show them the trail. They can collaborate on this, and we have the licenses. So, sir, this is the design model. This is the blueprint, right? And it's approved. So now to implement. So you go, you create a group, you create their accounts, you put them in that group, and you give them a license group that gives them the OneDrive, and then you create the DLP policies that you apply to that group, and boom, you have a model. You do your presentation to executive. Awesome, they call you a genius, and you get your promotion. Why? Because you just saved the bank X millions from paper waste that aligns with a business model and their partnership that they drive and they increase, they reduce carbon consumption, and they improve on sustainability well through technology. Am I communicating, guys? Okay, the room is too quiet. Hello, hi. Let's shake, 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 shake. Shake your hands. Let me know. Do something. Do something that makes me know that I'm making impact today. If I am adding any kind of value to us today, I need somebody to do something that proves to me that I am adding value today. If you have given me 2 hours of your time and it made sense to you, you do not feel that I just wasted or text that I just wasted 2 hours of your time. I need you next 1 minute to do something that proves to me. If I have just succeeded in wasting 2 hours of your time, I genuinely and sincerely apologize. Please hit me an email or chat me up and let me see how to make sure that I can make sure that I don't waste your time. But if I added value in the last 2 hours, I need to see some reaction that proves to me that we've been adding value and that our relationship in the last 2 hours has been worth your time. Are you having ideas? When I teach, I like people to have ideas because even me that is teaching you, there are many things I'm saying that are not on my notes. I was just having idea. This carbon one, I just had it. And remember that it was something I did over 5 years ago. How I was able to show an organization to drive paper waste down at the board level. Now, do you know that because of that thing, there was never any argument? Like I said, I didn't use OneDrive because then it wasn't OneDrive wasn't a big thing. I used Citrix share file. But you know that every year when it came to renew the license of Shift Share 5, nobody could contend with me because they're like, that's board project. So when you're struggling with budget, most times as tech, step back from the passion and the drive to deliver. Say, how is this adding value to the business? So licensing is one way. Sit down and say, every year we're spending cost on licensing. Maybe we're just giving licenses in the wrong way. What are the different types of users our organization? Step back and say, sir, how much is your budget for licensing? Let me sit down and do a restructuring and I can show you how we can save X, Y, Z. And guess what? By the time you do that, that money you saved, you can now use it to probably put up a WAF firewall or put up or send you guys for training. I did this again in an organization. I saved the company millions in US dollars through on licensing, and that value allowed 5 people go to Dubai. Then, and it was a big deal when you work in an organization and they're giving you an all-expense 7 days with Esther go to Dubai. God, I looked like a genius then, but I did it for my team, and they were so happy. They were happy. Why? I took it out and said, it's okay to say, let's go to the cloud, but what does this mean for business? So that's how you think as identity people or security people. You step away from the passion you have for your technology and say, how does this impact business? So licensing is one very important element. You're not really configuring anything, you're just assigning, but you want to think from a user perspective. Do this user needs this license? What type of license do they use? And how do I? And what you do with licensing is through grouping. Once you understand the users, you group them. Licensing groups are security groups because, like you said, you're securing the access to something, right? So you can have a retail sales, bundle them together, give them a retail license, give them a OneDrive license, and then, instead of doing it manually one by one, and then you miss it. So that's the importance of licensing. All right. I'm looking at that. We shoot 20 minutes past. So I just want to jump straight to Microsoft Entra today. I want you to leave today seeing real life Microsoft Entra and what it looks like. Can you guys give me another 15 minutes of your time and we'll be doing that if that's okay by you? If that's okay, please let me see. It's okay. We jump into I'll share my entire screen. I just hope that I don't have anything that you should not see. It made me remember once upon a time, a very senior colleague was doing what you would say is not ideal to be done on a corporate system. Unfortunately for him, his boss just came and said, like this year back when I was in Nigeria, came and said, I need you to quickly show us XYZ. And while he was trying to fondle with his sister, those, I call them umochos, started popping up. Even his boss tried to protect him because the boss came with his own boss and everybody was just hitting the laptop. What's happening? What's happening? IT. So when you want to share your screen, always make sure that if you're doing share entire screen, that you don't have Umochu on your system. But just kidding. Again, like I said, I like to just train these jokes to get us laughing. Now, remember I told you, let me see, can you see my screen? I can't see the chat because of the way I am sharing now. So I'm going to rely on you because I'm sharing with my entire screen. So I can't see the chat. So I'm going to rely on you. Let me see. Is there a way I can do it as this is? Sorry. Uh, there's no way because I'm using a browser. There's no way. There's no way. I'm not using the app, so I'm going to rely on you guys. I would speak, then I'll pause, and then look at the chat if there are questions. Okay. So remember I told you portal. So can you see portal.azure.com? I'm going to look at the chat now. Be sure that you can see. Then I'll come back again. Can we see portal.azure.com? I only just okay. Yeah. So I'm going to go back. Yeah. All right. So when you put in your browser, right? Portal. I said, do that now. You will see to give you a landing page asking for username and password. It's just that you don't have one yet. In fact, it even try to create one for you, but don't do that. Like I said, don't do anything. Enjoy the free one and do it after the training so that it can give you more days to practice on your own. And you will come here and see Microsoft Entra. Now, Microsoft Entra is here because I've used it. You can see it's bookmark. But if you just come here and search Microsoft Entra ID, again, it will show up here, right? And this is how Microsoft Entra ID lands. It will land on your tenant. You can see your tenant ID. You can see the prefix that I told you about. That will be there. You can see whatever number of users you have, groups, application. You can see here I have a global. It will just tell you high level, what your tenant is about. And from what we said, remember what we said, the first thing you want to do if you're setting this up for a small company for the start, you want to go into domain name so that you can add a custom domain, right? I don't have one. I was trying to buy one, but I forgot. I'll buy one and just show you how to add it next week, but that's fine. But you add your custom domain. The next thing you want to do is remember we talked about the tenant settings. You want to lock down this tenant at least to the basic settings for security. Then you come to the left and you will see properties. And then this is where you talk about tenant. Remember where I told you to tell you where your tenant, country is. So this tenant country is in what do you call it? In Netherlands. You can see it's compliant, is the model compliant. But bear with me. This is a company called Conto, so it's a demo tenant. So that's why it's like that. But in real life, you see here, so you can see technical contact, put the email address of who your technical contact is, your privacy policy, uh, and that's it. Is there any other thing important here to look at? No, you come to user settings, right? By default, you can see here saying users can't register applications. You want to switch this to no. Let me tell you one interesting thing about Microsoft I like. You see, for everything it tells you here, you can see an explanation, and you can see a link here that would, if you click, it will take you to where you can read. Other platforms are like have their own, but I just so like this for Microsoft. So even when they make changes to things, it helps you understand what has happened. So you can see here, the moment I landed, you can see it gives to explain this area for me, what it means, setting this option to know prevent users from creating application. You can then grant them the ability to I seen it. So even if after this class it's not everything's about jazzy for your brain, right? You can do this when you come. I'm saying when you set up your own demo now, not the one will give you, because the one will give you, you won't have access to do this. You can read and understand, right? Look at here, saying users can create security groups. You don't want that. It's too much power for users, right? Users can, you want to say no to here. Here it says restrict non-admin users from creating tenants. It says no, meaning that people without admin access can't spawn up tenants. So I think it was Tony, these are some of the settings you want to turn up that users, no, non-admin users, no, they shouldn't be able to do this. So you want to turn this on. Guest user access restriction. So you can see here, it's already telling you guest users have the same access as members. No. Guest users have limited access to properties and membership of, yes. Now, this is depending on your business. if you what this is saying here again, if you don't understand, if you click learn more, it will break it down for you. But what this is saying here is that, remember, when I create a group, which I will show you again, I can see the group membership. I can see who owns the group. I can see the number of people on the group. This is saying that a guest user has the ability to do that. So you want to, I recommend this book. We're reading it in one of the communities I belong, the hackers mindset. When you understand hackers, how they work. I did forensic for the bank for over, I think, 5 to 7 years, investigating major bank frauds. And when you want to catch them, the only way is to begin to think like it, like you wanted to commit that fraud. Then it will make sense. If you think your normal self, you'll be using, oh, I'm a child of God, this can never happen to me. And you will not be able to catch them. But when you switch your mode, so whenever they call, oh, there's been a breach, and they bring me to the team, I'm sitting there and I'm just saying, if I wanted to commit this fraud, what will I do? Because that's when I begin to see all the possible ways. So it's the same thing when you're doing settings. You need to ask yourself, yes, the business that said they want to do guest user is fine. But what if just one guest user wants to zoom away and do what is not right? Right? That's the problem. So you have to ask yourself, is this giving us comfort that will come back and bite us? You ask yourself. Even Microsoft, you can see to tell you most inclusive, most restrictive. It leaves it for you to decide. Restrict access to Microsoft Entra Admin Center. You can see here it says no, meaning that the admin center is going to be open to everybody, right? You want to, it's either you say yes, restrict it, and then you see where you now put only the people that have access. LinkedIn allow users to connect their work or school account with LinkedIn, so you can connect your work or school. Like I told you, is dependent on organizations. Some organizations don't want you to link your social media with them. So organization is part of visibility. Like those organizations where, like Glassdoor that will rate how organization is. So organizations are okay with it because that's how they get the rating that they are the best place to work and all of those things. So organizations will say, no, it exposes us too much. There are certain people that work in certain government agencies or security agencies that cannot let you know that that's where they work, right? I have a mentee like that is working in one of these very sensitive places, and that's it. Like, it's what it is. She can't go anywhere and mention where she's working. It's a no, right? And that's it. So those kind of places might not even want any connection between them and social media. But why did Microsoft put this? Like, again, because of when you advance, there's something called verified ID, right? You can use your corporate company to do a verified ID. So LinkedIn does it now. So if you go on LinkedIn, you see some of us who have verified. There's no big deal. Is that our organizations allow us, and because our organizations are well-known organizations, right? That have built, they've also done XYZ, they have their brand verified. LinkedIn allows you to use your organization, your company email to do your verified ID. So it kind of gives you further professionalism out there. So that's why Microsoft allows this. So again, what works for you, what works for your organization. So you can turn the settings here, save, then you can come here again. From here, you can, what did I do? Sorry. Please, are you still with me? Let me be sure you are still with me. Do I still have you guys in the house? Can you see what I'm doing? Is it making sense? Someone says, please, I can't see what you're sharing or reading from. Really? Someone again says, please, I can't see. I just came to Teams now. Were you not seeing before? Remember, I said I will be switching. So please let me know. I'm going to go back to the Azure portal, stay there for 1 minute and come back and confirm if you're seeing. Please let me know if you are seeing. So this is the Azure portal. Please let me know. I am in front of somewhere called Contoso User Settings. Contoso User Settings, right? So I'm going to move away from Contoso User Settings and come to the chat so that I will know if you're seeing it. But if you saw Contoso User Settings, please let me know. If you did not see that, please let me know, right? Okay, yeah, okay, I can see I can see your screen. Yes, so thank you. If you can't see, good. So please just disconnect, connect back. We're almost wrapping up for today, but I want us to get hands on portal before we go, because next week we're going to look at privilege identity management. Sorry. All right. From here to you can navigate to manage external collaboration settings, right? Again, what does it mean? It's still the same thing, right? How can I interact with external people? Here says anyone in the organization can invite guests, including guests and non-admin, most inclusive. This setting is turned on. You don't want to allow that, right? You only want users assigned to specific admin roles that can invite guests, or members and users can, but you don't want anyone in the organization, anyone that has access. Again, you want to look at this. Here says, okay, we have this setting turned on. You want to again turn here whether on or off. Come here, collaboration restricted. Cross-tenant settings are also evaluated here. So it says allow invitations to be sent to any domain. Again, most inclusive. So organizations, what they have done is say allow invitations only to the specified domains, so that when you go to the cross-tenant settings, only the domains you have specified can your organization interact with. So what this means is that you're saying somebody cannot just stay and meet one vendor and come and say he wants to do business with him. It's exposing us. So they build a process that will say, if you have a tenant that you're going to cross tenant with or collaborate with, fill this form, blah, blah, blah. Then we come and we add the domain and then we can interact with them. Right? So everything is based on use case and what the organization wants and how much exposure this will give you. But what Microsoft has done is they have left it for you because you know your business better. But when this leads to a breach, there's a responsibility model. Microsoft will say it was your responsibility, right? So some of these settings, to answer Tony again, these are all the settings that you put for tenant settings that allow you to put your tenant to be secure. Then if you come here, cross-tenant synchronization here, I think this is where you configure what you can synchronize from your tenant to another one. That's for him where you're setting up two tenants. There's another one called company branding. I hope you all know the importance of company branding to security, right? If you imagine them redirecting you to imagine clicking on something that you thought it was your company login portal, but when you landed, it didn't have your company brand. Right? I remember the early days when they used to clone. GTB Bank was one of the first banks that started internet banking, and they used to clone them. They would what used to give it away. Well, because I was a security, I could know was how the branding was, and you could just see one or two distortions. I was like, no, this is not how. And then I would go and type the GTB and I'll compare it and I'll see the difference. But they tried very well because it had the orange, it had this. So if you just get that email, just say reset your PIN, and you just people were clicking it and falling for it right from their email because it had the orange color and all of that. And so it had that disguise that could give them away. So this is how we set up our tenant and do the little security foundation settings, from external settings to groups, to user settings here, and then to your custom domain, right? Now let's move to users. We'll do just one quick how to set up a user and all that. There are two ways to set up a user. You can set up a user by directly coming here, say new user, set up a user. Easy peasy. One of the most easiest things to do, right? But one thing you must know, that's why I said that it's not in the creation of user. If I wanted to create a very simple user, that's it. That's it. I've used his first name. One of the most easiest things, I've created a user. So creating user is not the problem. I've created the user, look at him. But this is what is I remember we asked question, who is this person? How does our organization want to identify users? So the first thing you want to ask yourself is that, what's the naming convention? If it's a new organization, you want to say, I want to define the naming convention so that if I see any name that does not follow this convention, it's already a red flag. So what's the naming convention for? Is this identity a staff, contract staff, temporary staff, so that we know if we're putting extensions as an attribute that will differentiate them, right? You come here, other properties. This is where you can, what's the employee ID, right? Because you probably want to use the employee ID to populate your dynamic tree. So you want to put that job title, department, the day the person was hired, the office location. Like I've told you that I work from anywhere, but anywhere is still restrictive to the country I'm in, right? So because my location has been tied to the country, but I can work from anywhere. I can stand up and go into the park now with my laptop and work, because I can work from, but I'm restricted to this location. So you want to look at the properties and define what are the properties that you can see so many things there. You don't want to ask people their age group if your business is not if your business doesn't require people to ask their age group, right? But that's typically some of the settings that you can get. You can get all these settings and you can determine the one. Yeah, you have usage location, mobile phone number. You can determine the one that is relevant to the organization that you want to work with, right? So what do you do? The first thing to do is define the table. Sorry, define the design decisions. Do I want what's the naming convention? What are the required fields that we want? And then we can create the user. But once you have that, like I told you, creating the user is just one click step. Now, what if I have more than one user? Right? There's what we call the bulk operations. Are you still seeing my screen? I'm going to come to the chat to verify again that you can still see my screen. Are you still seeing my screen? Because I want to show you how to create bulk users. But are we okay with how to create one user? So one user, simple, straight, click, create, whatever naming convention you agree, that's it. But you can see that it will not populate any other field except you populate it. But can't you see how cumbersome that is? Clicking one by one. Imagine if I had to do this for 100 users. Will I still do it? Someone says, can the users view these settings too? No, they cannot. Or more feedback. No, your users can't view this, but users can view certain attributes that you have made available when you link it with things like Teams, right? Then they can see it. All right, so I'm going back to Azure now for us to continue our configuration. Right now, I'm saying that imagine you have to create 100 users. Imagine there was a graduate training program that was being done and 50, 20 users. Would you be doing this one by one? Frustrating. So you come to bulk operations and say, I want to do a bulk create, right? And then it will ask you, my camera is on, it will ask you to download a CSV file, right? And then it would give you this CSV file to populate with all the users. Again, making your life easy. So instead of you worrying about all of this, you can exchange this with HR to say, HR, use this CSV file, populate it with the fields. Remember, you have looked through the fields, you have determined the fields you want, populate it with these fields, and then I want to use it to create bulk users. So let's simulate. Yeah, so we downloaded. Let's open. I'll just create a user using the CSV file. USB. All right. No. All right, let me use the one I just downloaded now. Okay. I still see my screen, please. All right, so let's look at this CSV file. I want to be sure that you are seeing the CSV file. So I'm going to come back to the chat and be sure that you are seeing the CSV file. Okay, I can't find the chat. Is that closed by a meeting? Okay. Okay, I'm seeing, yeah. What is the minimum and maximum number of people that can hold each role? Are you talking about the admin roles? There are no limitations, depending on, but there's best practice. For global admin, best practice not to have more than three maximum, more than three people with global admin. If that's the type of role you're expecting, but it doesn't have limitation. But remember, the more people you give privilege role, the more exposed your organization is. Now I'm going back to the Excel CSV file for us to try and do a bulk look. So we've downloaded this. They gave us an example Display name is always your first name and your last name. So let's take Franca. Oh, sorry, I'm just making up this name. So if any of this name refer to you, apologies. I just made it up. Right. And in this company, they're just using the first name as the they're just using the first name as the username. Remember what I told you about domain, right? So next week we'll look at adding a domain so we can use it. But for now, because we don't have a domain, we're going to use the one that Microsoft gave us, right? Because we didn't custom our domain, so we just use this one, which is the primary domain that Microsoft gave us as the domain. When we add our domain next week, we would modify this place. So this will now be Franca at this. We will use the same password. This is default password that will prompt her to change it because we have the settings there. And we'll just paste it there. Outside. And then I'll just remove this example, right? It was just an example. I'll remove that field example. Remove the hyperlink. And I don't first name Franca, last name Donga. So IT, just put it, and that's it, right? I'm going to save this and close it to be sure of the name, right? And close this. All right. And then come back users and then go to my bulk operation, bulk create. Now, I just put one account there. I can't keep us here creating 5, 10, 15 accounts. Like I said, if the template works, what that shows you that if you populate the template with 1,000 names, template will work, right? So that's how I teach. I don't have to put 20 names on the sheet. What we're trying to show here with bulk upload is that you don't have to manually go one by one. If you create your template with all. Now remember, you're not the one recruiting. HR recruits, right? HR has their Excel that they are maintaining, or the HR solution, which I will show you other user provisioning next week, how HR can automate the process. And you won't even have to do anything in IT once the process has been automated. So we can come here and upload back. I think it's this one, right? And so you see, I deleted something that you didn't want me to delete, so it's complete, and that's a good thing. So see here, it's completed. It said I have removed the no version number. It wants me to put it back. So all right, so I'll just download another one. Sorry, it did not want me to delete no version, and that's the good thing. It tells you where the error message is, and you don't have to drink paracetamol for what does not concern you. So I'm going to. This is the one that I just downloaded now. I don't want to. I'll just copy this, open back this one. Yeah, it doesn't want me to delete this that I deleted. So I'll just paste back what I have here. I'll delete this one, rename this. I'll come back to my Excel. I didn't close this so we can read. So you see, when we uploaded, it told us the CSV file uploaded is not valid. Please verify operation type and correct CSV. It now told us what the error. The file has no version number. I remember when I deleted it because I thought it didn't need it, but it's looking for it. So I'm going to upload the latest one that I just edited. Can you see file upload successful? And then I'll say submit. And I'll just be waiting for it to create. Now, how many clicks did I do? Imagine that HR sent me that Excel with all the, because HR knows everything. HR knows the name of the user, the first name, the last name. HR will do the concatenation and add the domain. HR will put their department, their division, and whatever field. So you just, whatever field that I want, right? HR will populate it, and so you can have a process that, since HR is the one recruiting, HR, when you are raising the service ticket for us to create a user, use this template and give us back in this template. And all you will do is that you just be looking through to make sure anything, maybe are there people with the same number? And guess what? If you have somebody with the same name, it will throw up that error. And instead of doing click one by one, the same effort you use to do click one by one, you use it to do for 500 users, 1,000 users. You can see succeeded, file is ready, succeed, and that's it. I'm not here. I don't want to download. So let's close. So let's go. Let's go and search for who was that user we created. Franca, right? That's it, guys. See Franca. So we call it the GUI. This is called graphic user interface. So you can create users manually one by one here, or use the bulk operations through the graphic user interface. Another one to create is through PowerShell. PowerShell is, before I go to PowerShell, let me just again come back and look at questions. Any questions, please? Did that make sense? Is this making any kind of sense? All right. Okay. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. So now we've understood we can create users manually, we can create users with bulk, you can bulk upload your number of users, right? But I think you can't do more than 200 and something with that CSV file, except you're doing it in batches. I think the CSV file itself also has batches. So if you have an organization that wants to do 1,000 and stretch, then you have to revert back to PowerShell. So PowerShell, this is what PowerShell looks like. This is what the PowerShell looks like. Sorry for many people who don't like commands. I also don't like commands. But what I do is that when I have scripts, I just save them and it makes my life easier, right? So with the PowerShell, you can create a user, connect and create the user manually with the PowerShell. The PowerShell commands, I would drop the PowerShell commands and the I'll drop the PowerShell commands and the step-by-step for you, and then ask you to test it, right? So this is it. I've put it down together, asking you to test it just to see what it looks like when you use PowerShell. With PowerShell, there's no limitation. I think you can do 1,000 and the rest. So you will create the same CSV, point it to the PowerShell, and then it will create the user for you. These are people who like automation, like to script. This is Microsoft's own scripting interface. You don't have to do, but the point is, we don't create user one by one. User one by one is if somebody says you create one user, then that's fine. But in reality, you'll be doing lots of user management in bulk, and that's where it happens. Okay, I'm going to come back. We've extended, we've done 2 hours, 2 hours, 30 minutes, and it has been fun working with you guys. Any questions before we call it a day? Whew. Remember when I told you that you can manage users on the Entra portal, or you can manage users on the Microsoft Admin Center. So having that is asking that on the Admin Center, is it the same thing? So let me just demo how it looks like on the Admin Center. Again, please let me know if you can see Admin Center. All right, so again, please let me see if you can. I'm going to go to the admin center and then let me know you can see the admin center. So about the admin center, this is typically how it will look like. You would come here, your home would be like this typically, unless you can. So you can see it's telling us to set up our custom domain. Again, you can come down here to domains and you can now add your custom domain that will go to whatever. If it's GoDaddy, Namecheap, and guess what? Domains are as cheap as $1. You can buy a domain for $1. You can buy a domain for 1,002. So if you're in Nigeria, you can use Google Nest and buy domains at 1,002. There are lots of Nigeria. You don't have to kill yourself, that you can use for the next 1 year and play around all these tradings. If you have FX, you can buy $1, $2. Don't need to buy anything jazzy fancy. You're trading, and then just use it to practice what you need to practice. Again, like I said, you will have to do this because if everybody's adding domain in the tenant we're giving you people, you'll be creating complex. I'm going to go to the chat just to be sure that people are still seeing me. Someone says you're not sharing your screen. Thank you. That's why I had to say. I was saying that this is how it looks like the M365. You can see it here, the M365 admin center. This is where you add a domain. The same thing. If you add it here, the thing is it will automatically go and update the Azure portal for you. I'm saying buy cheap. When you set up your own, not the one that we're going to give you to practice, you won't be able to practice adding domain for that because everybody will just be adding domain. Imagine 59 users adding 59 domains. So who will allow you to do that? But when after the program, after 3 months, and you have your own platform, like I've told you, Microsoft can allow you to spin up a Azure portal. Go and buy a domain for $1, buy for 1,200 or whatever country you're in, and just simulate users. It gives you that feeling. Come here, and this is users, right? So this is where you create your users. Again, you can do it the same way we did in Azure portal, one by one, right? You can do one by one, or you can come here and say add multiple users. Again, even the add multiple users, it can allow you to do that. Or you come down here and say I like to use a CSV, and it will tell you to download the CSV that includes, the example. And once you download this, right, you fill in the details, browse, upload it, boom, you've created your users. You don't have to worry yourself. So the interface looks different, right? But they are all synced. So if you set it up here, you automatically will go into here to do it. So for example, if we let's just do one that is direct. Let's say we to the dot. All right. Nobody should tell him that we're using him to practice in our training. All right. So again, here, the good thing with when you use here, it will automatically ask you, do you want to add a license? And that's fine. If I don't want to add a license, it will ask us again to select. If you had multiple locations, can you see? I can select this user is in Nigeria. But today I'm not said is an American citizen. So let me check. I mean, he just got his pally, so let's not put him as. Okay, I don't want to give a license. Then you can now put here. So I don't want to give a license. And then blah blah blah. Create. So today we created today not in our admin center. Now let's go to our Azure and see if we can find today and boom, see today not yet. So they work hand in hand. If we create here, if we come back to here, let's see if we can find today not that we just created back in the admin center. That's it there. Let's see Franca. We created Franca with Azure. That's Franca there. All right. Any questions? Absolutely, and this I'm going to send you. So what I intentionally did was you can see it here. I've put the PowerShell scripts in bits by bits for you, and I'll put a link to Microsoft that will show you how to create users with PowerShell, how to create it directly, how to create it using CSV file. This is my CSV file. I will, of course, remove my name and tell you how to add your own part one. Then a bit of you can see a bit of description to explain what the CSV files are. And just so that can help you. And there's some prerequisites how you need to set your prescribed for your PowerShell scripts. Yes, I'll put that in. You get that. Everything we're doing is strictly on the cloud. It's going to stay on the cloud. There's nothing on-prem. Yeah. Okay. So typically, right, this is how you would have your Entra Connect. Yeah. So you have your on-prem by this guy. Sorry. So you have your on-prem here, right? Sitting when we say on-prem, guys, remember that old school guy I talked about last week that back in the days a company would set up a building or somewhere and put in servers and put in everything. So the Microsoft identity provider, they used to be called the Microsoft Windows Active Directory, and many organizations still have it. Lots of your big organizations today still have it, right? Because it takes a lot to start moving identities off there. A lot of their legacy applications are still, so they still have it. But when they want to connect from there to the cloud, Microsoft now gives them this guy called the Microsoft. Sorry, so they want to now connect from this on-prem. You now want to connect to the cloud. So this is who we have been working with, right? We've been working with this guy. This is all the creation we've been doing is on this guy. Now you want to get this your on-prem to talk to here. What do? Microsoft tells you to go and use what they call the Microsoft Entra Connect, right? So when you set up the Entra Connect here, you can see it. This is your on-prem. It now synchronizes from your on-prem to the cloud and back. So your users can talk directly to the cloud if they have applications, but they can also talk from on-prem to the cloud. So when it comes to user creation that we just did, what will happen? You will not create the user here. This is where we are creating the user. Now you will not create the user here. You will go and create the user here. And then the synchronization will synchronize the user to Entra for you. I mean, does that answer your question? Tony, I'm happy. I'm happy this helped clarify something ATS hasn't done. Thank you so much. Any questions, guys? It's 4 o'clock. Thank you. You've been with us for 3 good hours. Thank you so much. If there are no questions, we'll call it a day so that you can have back your Saturday. I'm happy that we've been able to keep you engaged, and I'm hoping that this is adding value as you are all expecting. Please, assignment. First assignment, I want to see your visibility plan for the next 21 days. You don't have to post every day. Pick 2 days, at least 2 days in a week that you're going to share something that this period and this journey is learning for you. Those of you who did not finish module 1 or who did not even start it, that I dropped under the Microsoft Learn, please finish it. I'm going to drop the second module that we're going to read in readiness for the next class, right? I'm going to also drop the 15 questions that recaps what we learned today, like we did previously on the WhatsApp chat. What I did not do last week, and I apologize, was because the coordinators were giving us, and I did not want to distract what they were saying because it was very important. I'm supposed to go back to the 15 questions I sent and confirm the right answer. So that will be on me. I will confirm those answers, and I will set another 15 questions today. Trust me, I do those questions when I'm lying down on my bed trying to shut down for the night. If many of you looked at the time, I'm sure you would have been wondering, what's this woman doing? But that's the best time to set questions. So you might not see it now, you might see it when you wake up tomorrow morning, that's fine. But I'll drop 15 questions to just recap what we've done today. I encourage you, please go and finish the Microsoft Learn. Don't do it without logging in. Make sure you log into the Microsoft Learn before you do it, just so that you can get your badges, right? Because that portal has a way it confuses you. Because you see it, you'll be reading. When you now come back next time and you log in, you will now not see your progress. So please create an account, log in, and then do your online, learning from the Microsoft Learn, right? So that it will give you your badges at the end of it. That's one. Two question. I will set up the 15 questions. You do it. The second one, log into your Microsoft Learn. Do the 48 minutes training that you did not do last week, and I will now drop what the new one is for this week. Three, I want to see your 21 days visibility plan with just only 2 days per week. Then you're going to talk about what you're learning on this journey, right? And please, if there are any other questions, please drop for me. We will tidy up access. You would get access before Saturday. You would have access to a Microsoft tenant like I have done, and I will try and give you simple tasks on how to create users, two users using one create user with single user, create user with bulk user. The way you will submit that particular assignment for me was that you will record it. Yes, I will give you a location where you will drop all these things. Don't worry, I have SharePoint sites. It's not a problem for me. You will upload your assignments there for me with your names, and I will look at it. I have energy for that. I will look at it, look at all your tasks and assignments as you submit them. So all of this, we're going to be busy in the WhatsApp group. So you can see everything I've said is so much. I'm going to drop them in the WhatsApp group, working with Anu. Please enjoy this program and take advantage of us. Thank you so much. Yes,